Chapter 8:15. Qin thought she was feeling unwell, but after asking several questions, Shuya only shook her head and her heartbeat quickened. Seeing that she seemed fine, Qin thought to himself that women were truly hard to understand. He simply ignored her. A moment later, Qin stood atop a large rock on the seashore. He found a ship that White Ape had spoken of, but as he carefully looked at it, he couldn't help but let out a long breath. It took him a great deal of effort to suppress the urge to ridicule it. That's right, there was a ship here, and it wasn't small at all. But Qin could guarantee that it had been docked here for several hundred years or even longer. In a situation where it hadn't been maintained, the entire ship had been soaked in seawater. A wave came crashing over, sweeping away a large chunk of rotten wood. Qin's lips twitched as he saw this. Turning around, he met Shui's gaze and took a deep breath. Looks like we'll have to stay on the island for a while. Since the ship was broken, they could just build another one. For cultivators, it was not a problem. Chopping wood, dragging it to the clearing, handling the wet wood for the next 2 days, Qin busied himself at the seaside. After Qing woke up, she actually knew some shipbuilding techniques. This caused Qin to be overjoyed, and he greatly increased the speed at which he built the ship. On the 4th day, a barely symmetrical ship was anchored to the shore by ropes. Qin glanced at it several times. Although there were many areas where he wasn't satisfied, this wasn't easy for a novice. Moreover, he didn't expect this ship to be used for a long time. He only wanted it to carry them away from the formation that the White Ape had mentioned. As for not relying on the ship and directly flying through the fog, in truth, Qin had considered this before. But since White Ape had specifically told him that there was a ship docked here, there must be a reason. If they flew out of the fog directly, they might encounter some sort of situation. It was better not to take the risk. After making a final reinforcement and carefully inspecting everything, Qin boarded the ship with the Shui sisters. They raised the sails and cut off the ropes. With the sea breeze, the ship broke through the waves and rapidly sailed away from the island. Soon, the island vanished from sight. Qin picked up the White Ape's fur, and sure enough, the fog's influence on him disappeared. Even though his divine sense was still unable to travel too far away from his body, he could at least determine the direction. Since he was in a place enveloped by a formation, as long as he headed in a certain direction, he would be able to get out of this place sooner or later. Qin sat cross-legged at the bow, controlling the course of the ship. He frowned, worry in his eyes. Because of the accident midway, it was already past the start time of the Beast Trainer tournament. He hoped that accident would push the competition back, otherwise it would be even more trouble. But as he thought of that terrifying White Ape, he relaxed a little. It had a deep relationship with the chicken overlord, so it shouldn't be able to watch helplessly as it died. Looking at it this way, he had suffered a calamity, and this fellow had profited from the disaster. This was the so-called harming others to benefit oneself. You had suffered a disaster, but that this fellow had benefited from this. This was he, Qin. Clearwood Qing's cheeks blushed red. She looked at Qin and hesitated for a moment. Then she said, "Big brother Qin, I will fulfill my promise. But please guarantee that you won't touch my little sister." Qin was stunned. As he looked at the shy Shui Qing in front of him, he felt dizzy for a second or two. You was to say, there, to himself. Look, do, think. Hard eye, to say. Across from him, Clearwood Qing revealed a panicked expression. In her eyes, Qin silence clearly represented a different meaning. Across from him, Qing revealed a panicked expression. In her eyes, Qin silence clearly represented a different meaning. What is this? Why is she begging me? What did I do? Qin hurriedly said, "The words I said in a moment of desperation don't count. I never took it to heart, so you should also forget about it. Get up and leave. Your injuries haven't healed yet. Don't run around. Go back to the cabin and rest." Looking at his slightly helpless and panicked back, Qing's face was so red it seemed as if it would drip blood. But Her eyes gradually softened. It was only now that she finally believed her little sister's words. That big brother Chin really was a good person. Because of the white ape's fur, the voyage went smoothly. They didn't encounter any monster beast attacks. 5 days later, a ray of light fell on the ship. The Shui sisters began to cry out in joy. They were out, facing the sunlight. Chinyu smiled. Although they were still drifting on the boundless sea, after leaving the thick fog that blocked out the skies, he felt refreshed. After cheering, the Shui sisters hugged each other and cried. In a short period of time, they had experienced far too many twists and turns. If they hadn't been lucky enough to run into Chinyu, the two of them would have died long ago. They would have been buried in the sea and become food for the fish and shrimp. Thinking of this, the two of them felt even more grateful towards Chinyu. They glanced at him as he turned his back on them, so they wouldn't feel embarrassed. The two sisters glanced at each other and nodded at the same time. The night sky was bright, and the stars seemed to hang in front of them, as if they could be plucked at any moment. There was a knock on the door. Chinyu opened his eyes. "Come in." Shui Qingqing and Shuiya pushed open the door and walked in. "Big brother Qin." What's the matter?" Shuiya stepped forwards and took out a jade box from her chest. "Big brother Qin, it was thanks to your help that we sisters were able to live to this day. There is nothing we can do to repay you, so we can only give this to you. I hope that big brother Qin will accept it, otherwise we sisters will find it hard to rest in our hearts." Chinyu glanced at it and suddenly said, "When you were being hunted down, was it because of this?" The Shui family sisters were startled. They clearly didn't think that Chinyu would already know, but the more it was like this, the more it showed his character. He had already guessed that they had a treasure on them, but he had never done anything about it. Shui Qingqing nodded. "That's right. The reason we sisters escaped from our homes was because of the thing in this box." Chinyu thought for a moment. He met the Shui family sister's eyes and said, "All right, I will accept it." With his current cultivation, ordinary treasures weren't worthy in his eyes. The reason he accepted it was only to make them feel at ease so that they wouldn't think about it every day. He turned his hand and put away the jade box. Shui Qingqing and Shuiya felt a bit lost, but also a bit relieved. After all, the reason they had fallen to their current situation was all because of this item. "Big brother Qin, we won't disturb your rest any longer. We will bid our farewells." 3 days after leaving the fog, Chinyu and the others were lucky enough to run into a search and rescue fleet from the Starfall tribe. After confirming each other's identities, they boarded the Beast Trainer Alliance's ship. After exchanging several words and confirming that because of this accident, the competition had been postponed, Chinyu finally relaxed. Luckily, he hadn't missed it. Otherwise, this trouble would have been in vain. "The three of you, will you be living together, or..." Although it was a bit presumptuous to ask this, the Alliance cultivator who was responsible for this subconsciously asked as he looked at the sisters standing behind Chinyu. Chinyu said, "Separate." The Shui family sisters shouted, "Together." The surroundings fell silent. Chinyu could clearly see that the Alliance cultivator next to him was stunned for at least 3 seconds. Then he looked at Chinyu with envy in his eyes, as if he were worshipping a peerless master that lived in seclusion. In the end, the three of them were assigned to the same cabin. Facing the sisters who didn't feel safe at all, Chinyu chose to back down. But none of the erotic activities that everyone imagined occurred. The cabin was extremely large. After Chinyu chose a room, he went into seclusion. 10 days later, the ship completed its search and rescue mission and brought everyone to Starfall Archipelago. The ship docked, and Chinyu stepped onto the ground. He turned and said, "Miss Shui, I still have to look for my lost companions. Let's part ways here." He nodded and left. Shuiya took a step forwards. She opened her mouth to say something, but was pulled back by Shui Qingqing. Shui Qingqing shook her head. "Big sister," Shui Qingqing said, "Big brother Qin saved us, and we have already given him our most precious things. Since Big brother Qin doesn't want to be too close to us, then we can consider our debts even. But that's enough. Although we don't have Big brother Qin as our backer, us sisters' talents are quite fierce. We will definitely be chosen by those with good eyesight. We might even be able to enter the tutelage of some great figure in the Alliance, and we won't need to run away anymore. Looking at her big sister's eyes, Shui Qingqing weakly agreed. The Beast Trainer Alliance had already prepared the living quarters for the participating cultivators. After Qin Yu showed his identification, he was placed in a small, independent courtyard. He stood at the entrance and looked around. Although the courtyard wasn't too large, it was exquisitely built and the decorations could be considered meticulous. For them to put so much effort into a residential area that was only temporarily used, it could be seen just how rich and generous the Beast Trainer Alliance was. Qin Yu inwardly praised. Then, as if sensing something, he turned his head to look behind him. On the stone path in front of the courtyard, there were several cultivators walking toward them. The one surrounded by the crowd was an elegant, middle-aged man. Judging from the fawning expressions of the people around him, he shouldn't be a simple person. Their eyes met. The middle-aged man smiled and nodded. Then, he looked away and whispered with the people around him as they walked away. Qin Yu frowned. He had never seen this person before, but that gaze just now, before he could think any further, he heard cheers in his ears. Teacher. Yin Dai threw herself into his arms, her eyes red. I knew that nothing would happen to you. Feeling the softness of his female disciple's chest, Qin Yu awkwardly coughed. He took a step back and put some distance between them. How did you know I was here? Senior Lin nodded, not speaking. He actually relaxed inwardly. Dorlies chuckled. Don't hug me so tightly. There's so many people coming and going. So, little girl, you should pay attention to your image. She looked him up and down. Then, she sniffed and her eyes brightened. Qin Yu, you brat, you aren't being honest. Have you been provoking other women these past few days? Qin Yu was left speechless. Did this woman have a dog's nose? She could even smell something like this. He didn't answer. He helped Yin Dai stand up and asked her the same question again. Yin Dai blushed red. She glared at Dorlies and respectfully said, We arrived on the island several days earlier than teacher and have been asking around for news of you. When we saw your name appear on the list, we immediately came looking for you. Qin Yu nodded. It's good that everyone is fine. Moreover, the match has already been postponed, so there wasn't any delay. Senior Lin said, We are fine, but the Beast Trainer Alliance's troubles aren't small this time. After speaking a few more words, Qin Yu learned that the Alliance had sent out a total of 8 ships to pick up people. Only 2 of them hadn't been attacked by the giant beasts. The rest had suffered heavy casualties. If something happened on the Beast Trainer Alliance's ships, they would certainly have to take responsibility. Qin Yu frowned. 6 ships had been attacked by giant beasts at the same time. In addition to their actions of towing the ships, no matter how he looked at it, there was something strange about this. Chapter 816. The Beast Trainer Alliance had indeed encountered a great trouble. Although they were powerful and unrivaled in the world, far too many people had died this time. Even though the cultivators that rode the Alliance ships had low statuses, that was only relative. When the number of relatives and friends of the victims reached a certain threshold, monstrous waves began to form. The Beast Trainer Alliance tried their best to appear calm, but the atmosphere on Starfall Archipelago was still incomparably solemn. Walking on the streets, one could see Alliance cultivators hurrying about with dignified expressions. This situation continued for half a month before gradually easing. It was unknown just what price the Beast Trainer Alliance had paid to quell the anger of all sides. But this had nothing to do with Qin Yu. The only thing he cared about was that the Beast Trainer Grand Competition that had been delayed for nearly 3 months was finally about to begin. The rules of the competition had already been issued. Just like in previous years, it was divided into 3 stages: preliminary, semifinals, and final. The final rankings would be determined by a unique weighting factor, and the top 10 Beast Trainers would obtain a Grandmaster Beast Trainer medal issued by the Alliance. With this medal, no matter what influence they came from, they would always welcome them with a smile. This was how it should be. Otherwise, why would everyone travel hundreds of millions of miles to gather here from all over the world just to participate in some grand competition? Of course, this shining gold medal that could last them a lifetime was only for those that didn't understand. But Those that knew the truth knew that after obtaining this medal, they would have a chance to enter the Alliance's mystic realm. That was a true lucky chance. As for what a lucky chance was, only a small number of people knew. Moreover, they often kept it a secret and never spoke a single word about it. Chinyu flipped through the rules of the competition. Besides some rules and a general time schedule, there wasn't any mention of the content of the competition. Elder Lin explained, "The Beast Trainer Alliance Grand Competition has always been like this. Although the competition process is the same, none of the stages are repeated. Each time, there will be a completely new topic." Chinyu nodded. No wonder he could run into the giant spirit clan that sold information in Vasi City. Although their goal was to draw Dorlease over, there really was such a thing. Thinking about it, if he could obtain the topic ahead of time, while everyone else was still confused, that would truly be a wonderful matter. Should he think of a way to obtain the topic ahead of time? Chinyu's thoughts raced, and he immediately suppressed them. If the Beast Trainer Alliance couldn't even keep this a secret, then the so-called Alliance competition that gathered all the Beast Trainer powerhouses of the world would have become nothing more than a joke. How could it have continued to this day? In short, something like a question leak might really exist, but it was definitely limited to a very small circle. It was impossible for it to be sold on a large scale. Therefore, if anyone really believed in this kind of thing, then that person's brain wasn't enough. 3 days later, the preliminaries of the Alliance competition began as scheduled. After handing in the proof of identity and confirming that there was no mistake, the contestant would receive the Jade token. This thing must be kept well, as it would be used until the end of the competition. Standing on a massive square, Chinyu swept his eyes around. He couldn't see the end of the vast crowd. This number was probably at least a few thousand people, and this was under the premise that they had been attacked by the giant beasts. If this incident had not happened, the number of people would have been even higher. It would not have been difficult for the number to exceed 10,000. If Lin King Alliance with Beast Trainers Alliance, then it there, and there. Beast Trainer. In this competition, tens of thousands of Beast Trainers had gathered. Moreover, these people had already been screened ahead of time. Not to mention anything else, just the rallying power of the Beast Trainer Alliance was amazing. Fellow Beast Trainers, please follow the instructions on your participation Jade tokens to the arena of the preliminaries. Do not disturb the order of the competition, otherwise you will be stripped of your qualifications to participate. I thank everyone for your cooperation. On the high platform, an Alliance elder gave a brief speech. He waved his hand, indicating that the preliminaries had begun. The vast crowd of several thousand people divided into 4 teams that went in 4 different directions. Chinyu was in the team that went south. Besides the sound of footsteps, he couldn't hear anything else. Everyone had dignified expressions. They were constantly guessing what the topic of the first preliminaries would be. Soon, the team left the Alliance city. There was actually a large ship already waiting at the seaside. They were going out to sea. Many beast trainers revealed hesitant expressions. Whether or not they had been besieged by the great beasts, it hadn't been too long since that happened. As they thought of those unlucky fellows that had died, they certainly felt uncomfortable. The first preliminaries will be held on another island. I ask all beast trainers to rest assured that we have already set up strict defenses. There will not be any problems. Of course, if there's a beast trainer that doesn't wish to take risks, you may choose to withdraw. The Alliance will not force you. Withdrawing from the competition was impossible. Since things had come to this, they might as well hurry up and board the ship. Chinyu leaned against the railing of the ship. He looked down and could see the rapidly moving ship and the turbulent waters that separated it. Around 2 hours later, the ship docked next to a small island. It was clear that it had been artificially developed recently. On the side of the newly built road, there were some broken branches and leaves that glowed with green. Since they had come, when they were asked to disembark, no one hesitated. They followed the Alliance cultivators along the road and soon arrived at a mountain valley. As everyone saw this mountain valley, their eyes widened. They couldn't help but think, just what sort of trick was the Beast Trainer Alliance playing this time? As far as the eye could see, the mountain valley was dozens of miles wide and filled with monster beasts. There were giant crocodiles that weaved through the swamps, divine eagles that soared low in the air, and even a strange black wolf. Its body was over 10 meters long, and its fur seemed to be dyed with ink. Beneath the sunlight, it shimmered with a strange halo. But there were even more monster beasts with weak auras. For instance, golden chickens, leopard cats, 3-foot-tall rabbits, and so forth. But what was strange was that even though these monster beasts had different strengths and different tastes, there actually wasn't any bloodshed. All of the monster beasts stopped in their own range of activity. As they looked at the beast trainers arriving from outside the mountain valley, their eyes were either filled with fear or they had cold and callous expressions. Fellow beast trainers, the topic of the first preliminaries of the alliance competition is affinity. Without using any strength, if you can obtain the approval of the monster beasts in this mountain valley within 4 hours, then you will pass the test. According to how long it takes for you to obtain approval and the strength of the monster beasts you choose, we will arrange your ranking. Of course, if there are any beast trainers that are worried about fairness, we can provide a chance to switch venues. 10 miles in this direction is another competition venue. After waiting for a moment, besides a pale-faced female cultivator who raised her hand and requested to switch venues, no one had any objections. Chinyu followed the female cultivator's gaze and saw a surprisingly talented mouse in the mountain valley. This mouse was over 2 feet long, and he was left speechless for 3 or 4 seconds. As a beast trainer, he normally dealt with all sorts of fierce monster beasts and even used them for experiments. Yet, he was actually afraid of a mouse. The female cultivator was quickly taken away. As the alliance cultivator presiding over the preliminaries waved his hand, an invisible array formation appeared from nothingness. The monster beasts in the mountain valley stirred restlessly. In particular, there were several great monsters with considerable strength. Their eyes flashed again and again, but they had clearly suffered a loss before. They only hesitated for a moment before giving up on the idea of rushing out and lowering their heads. Everyone, rest assured that under the cover of the array formation, no monster beast will take the initiative to attack you. But if you choose a target, then this restriction will disappear. So, I must solemnly remind everyone that it is best to act within your limits to avoid any accidents. Of course, if you encounter a danger that you cannot contend with, you can choose to ask for help. As long as you shatter the jade token on your body, you can be directly teleported out of the mountain valley. This explanation caused many nervous beast trainers to let out sighs of relief. The speed at which they entered the mountain valley increased. But there were even more people who remained calm from start to finish, their expressions filled with confidence. Chinyu stood in the mountain valley, looking at a group of cultivators in the distance, surrounding a giant black wolf with icy eyes. He sighed inwardly. The Beast Trainer Alliance's question makers were indeed skilled. Although this seemed like a simple test, the truth was that it involved many different areas. For instance, it was a test of eyesight. Although there were many fierce monster beasts in the mountain valley, no one could be sure that there weren't any great monsters hiding in the dark. Taking a step further, even if one chose a monster beast, they had to consider whether or not they had the ability to subdue it. This was another test. Moreover, looking at the current situation, if one could see a fierce monster beast, then everyone could as well. For instance, the giant black wolf that was surrounded by many people. In this sort of situation, wanting to obtain its approval was clearly an incomparably difficult matter. Then, should they try their luck on it, or choose another monster beast? If they left, would they be taking advantage of others? In short, this first round of preliminaries had already shown their skill. For the Beast Trainer Alliance to have its current status, it wasn't an undeserved reputation. Chinyu turned and walked away. He didn't choose to compete with others. There were many monster beasts in the mountain valley, and he had plenty of time. Moreover, he didn't plan on attracting too much attention during this alliance competition. He only wanted to obtain the qualifications to enter the mystic realm. Of course, the most important reason was that even if he wasted time and gained nothing in the end, Chinyu was confident he could snatch a monster beast from someone else. The ancient race bloodline had a natural suppressive effect on all monster beasts in this world. But this wasn't within the scope of cheating. Thus, this seemingly fair and high-standard examination was meaningless from the start when placed on Chinyu. Most people were already busy communicating with the monster beasts, using all sorts of methods. Chinyu even saw a brother kneeling on the ground, his mouth humming as he tried to communicate with a thick black wild boar. As for the thick black boar, it was clearly confused. It sniffed the air, but it couldn't figure out why this fellow who didn't look like it at all smelled the same as its fellow clansmen. Chinyu was also curious. Then he saw this brother take out a jade bottle from his chest and pour something on himself, suppressing his disgust. After sniffing from afar, Chinyu turned and walked away. He admired this brother to the extreme. It was rare to see someone so ruthless to themselves. As everyone was busy, there were also some people wandering around the mountain valley. Besides an extremely small number of people who didn't have any confidence in themselves, most of them were confident in themselves. Of course, this didn't rule out the possibility that some people were too arrogant and overestimated their own strength. Chinyu saw a cultivator who had been slapped by an unremarkable gray monkey. The cultivator had blood spurting out of his nose and mouth as he screamed miserably and shattered his jade tablet. Of course, this didn't scare anyone away. Instead, in the blink of an eye, 4 or 5 people surrounded the monkey. They looked up and down at the monkey with burning eyes. Hey, Little Red. I'll call you Little Red, okay? Nod your head. Even if you call me once, that can be considered a response. Don't be so arrogant. Look at how others don't even look at you. Only I think we are fated to meet. You're really not going to respond? If you continue like this, I'm going to leave. Let me tell you, if I leave, no one will look at you again. At that time, you won't be able to leave this mountain valley cage. Don't regret it at that time. As soon as she finished speaking, the not-so-tall girl in red clothes heard the footsteps behind her. Sure enough, she immediately saw a trace of ridicule flash in the eyes of this silly-looking little red bird. Suhong's face fell. She turned around and glared fiercely at Chinyu. She clenched her small, white canine teeth and said, "There are plenty of monster beasts in this mountain valley. Why are you standing here?" Chinyu had a calm expression. "The competition's rules don't say that I can't be here." "You?" Suhong was so angry that her teeth itched. But looking at Chinyu's calm demeanor, she knew that he wasn't easy to deal with. She took a deep breath and turned her head away. She couldn't waste any more time on him. Little Red. She tried to curry favor with the red bird again. But she didn't know if it was because Chinyu was here, but the red bird became even more arrogant and didn't even look in her direction. On top of that, Suhong could clearly feel the interested gaze that was directed at her from behind. She was getting more and more impatient. "What are you looking at? Have you never seen a beautiful woman before? You pervert!" With a shrill scream, Suhong turned and walked away. Chinyu was expressionless, not caring about her attitude at all. He looked at the red bird and stood there in silence. Then, he suddenly reached out a hand and said, "Come with me." The red bird tilted its head as if it were sizing him up. Then, it flapped its wings and landed on Chinyu's shoulder. After leaving, Suhong, who had been watching from the corner of her eyes, nearly exploded with anger as she saw this. She was beautiful, had a sweet mouth, and had a good temperament. In every way, she was better than this vulgar man, and yet the little red bird had chosen him. "You smelly blind bird, you will regret this in the future. And also that vulgar man. The two of us have formed enmity today." Chinyu wasn't in a hurry to leave. After waiting for a moment, he left the mountain valley with the redbird. And at this time, there were already 7 or 8 participating cultivators standing in front of them, all of them smiling. One of them was a white-faced beast trainer. Beside him stood a handsome gray wolf. Although it was much worse than the pitch-black wolf king, it was still an impressive aura. This person had an arrogant expression and couldn't suppress the joy in his eyes. It was clear he had obtained a good result. As Chinyu walked over, several people's eyes gathered on him. But after a brief pause, they all looked away. 2 of them couldn't help but sneer. In their opinion, Chinyu wasn't slow at all. If he had chosen such a weak red bird, what use was there in doing so? Even if he passed the preliminaries, he was doomed to be at the bottom with no chance of rising up. The Alliance cultivators were of good quality. They didn't reveal the least bit of contempt because of the red bird on Qin Yu's shoulder. After examining Qin Yu's participation jade token, they smiled and said, "Congratulations to fellow Taoist Qin for smoothly passing the preliminaries. Please allow us to appraise the red bird on your shoulder." Qin Yu nodded. With a flick of his shoulder, the red bird flew out and drilled into the birdcage across from him. Immediately, Alliance cultivators carried it away. "Fellow Taoist, please wait a moment." As Qin Yu retreated to the side and waited, several more cultivators walked out of the mountain valley. As they swept their eyes over Qin Yu and the others that came out first, their expressions were a bit unfriendly. It seemed that these people in front of them weren't feeling too good about being overtaken by others. As the several people examined their tokens and handed over the monster beasts they had subdued, the Alliance cultivator that left with the birdcage walked over. He looked at Qin Yu and unconsciously said with a respectful tone, "Fellow Taoist Qin Yu, the appraisal has been completed. The final rankings will only be decided after the preliminaries are over." Seeing this, the complexions of the several participating beast trainers changed. The arrogant, pale-faced cultivator also couldn't help but look at Qin Yu. Qin Yu didn't seem to notice any of this. He brought the red bird to the side and stood still. Then, he closed his eyes and quietly waited. As more and more people left the mountain valley, the gazes on him soon disappeared. From time to time, he could hear low shouts in his ears. It was clear that some people had subdued powerful monster beasts. For hours later, the preliminaries ended. Almost all of the beast trainers that entered the mountain valley passed. After all, they had already passed the screening process, so their strength wouldn't be too bad. And an affinity with monster beasts was an ability that a successful beast trainer had to possess. Of course, although the chances of passing were high, the difference in strength between the monster beasts they subdued was massive. At this moment, the most eye-catching were the three people that had subdued the swamp crocodile, the flaming eagle, and the black wolf king. The auras of these three monster beasts were tyrannical. As they swept their eyes around, they were filled with arrogance and disdain. The three beast trainers that had subdued them, 2 men and 1 woman, had calm expressions. They didn't reveal the slightest bit of joy because of their results. It was clear that they came from a great background and were able to maintain their composure. As everyone was in awe and surprise, Qin Yu's eyes fell on a distant corner. There, he saw a cold-faced young man. There was a small snow-white beast lying at his feet, its 2 front paws holding its head. It would occasionally look up to reveal its watery eyes, filled with apprehension and fear. It seemed that the slightest bit of movement would scare it away. As Qin Yu carefully looked around, he sighed inwardly. The Alliance tournament was truly filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. He definitely wasn't the only one with strength. As Qin Yu was sighing with emotion, he suddenly felt a ferocious gaze hatefully glaring at him. His eyes moved and fell on the red-clothed petite figure standing beside the cold-faced young man. Not only did she not look away, but she even made a very unsightly gesture at him. Qin Yu thought that girls these days were far too fierce. He looked away on his own initiative, so he didn't see her. Su Hongyi clenched her teeth, and then moved closer to the cold-faced young man's ear and said something. The cold-faced young man looked at Qin Yu and nodded, not speaking. Chapter 817. Because there were many participants in the preliminaries, they were divided into 4 examination venues and conducted at the same time. It took some time to gather the results, and then the ranking list was announced 2 days later. There was no need to announce it. After the Beast Trainer Alliance finalized the ranking list, all participants could receive information on the ranking list through their jade tokens. In his room, Qin Yu sat down cross-legged. His eyes suddenly flashed open, and he took out a participant token. The surface of the token constantly sparkled. The results are out. He probed it with his divine sense. A moment later, Qin Yu looked up and subconsciously rubbed his chin. 89th place. Although Qin Yu had deliberately hidden his strength, in truth, this ranking was a bit beyond his expectations. He had almost fallen out of the top 100. Qin Yu's original plan was to maintain a ranking in the top 50 to ensure that he had the qualifications to participate in the final selection. The Alliance tournament, was truly worthy of being called the top platform for beast trainers. Truly, powerhouses came forth in large numbers. It looked like he would have to be a bit more serious in the following matches. If he failed, that would be a great joke. If he walked the low-key route and ended up leaving himself out, Qin Yu wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. He looked up at the bird cage on the windowsill. Looking up at the sky, Qin Yu had a thoughtful look on his face. This fellow's ability to hide was quite good. Otherwise, even if he had deliberately delayed himself in the preliminaries, his ranking wouldn't have been so low. It was time to have a good talk with it. Qin Yu walked to the window. The red bird turned its head, its eyes incomparably calm. "Little Red, tell me, what conditions do you have in order to help me obtain the qualifications to enter the mystic realm?" The red bird tilted its head and looked at him. After thinking for a long time, it slowly shook its head. Qin Yu didn't think that this was because it refused to help him. Otherwise, it wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to follow him out from the mountain valley. Moreover, he wasn't someone who was easy to play with. Did it really think that it could casually walk away after boarding the boat? It was too naive. "You don't know what you want?" The red bird nodded. Qin Yu smiled. "That's easy. Consider it as me owing you a favor. If you think of something in the future, how about it?" After a moment of hesitation, the red bird agreed. After speaking, it continued to look at the sky outside the window. It had a cold and callous appearance. It was unknown what it was thinking. Qin Yu knew that it didn't yearn to fly, but was simply thinking about some matters. Ranked 89th. Amongst the several thousand beast trainers here, he was considered extremely outstanding. Many people glanced over Qin Yu's name and began to secretly inquire about his background. Since the start of the Alliance tournament, the ones who were the most outstanding and eye-catching were indeed the ones who were ranked in the top 10. However, this did not mean that the others would not be able to obtain the rewards they deserved. As long as one displayed superior strength in the tournament, they would naturally attract the attention of those who were interested in them, and they would start trying to get in touch with them. Of course, the number of people paying attention to Qin Yu was much smaller than those paying attention to the top of the rankings. After the preliminaries, the most dazzling star of the Starfall Archipelago was called Luo He. It was said that this person came from the Tong province's Luo family that had fallen into desolation for tens of thousands of years. He was a beast trainer genius that only appeared once in 10,000 years. In the preliminary selections, Luo, he was allocated to the northern arena. With her sharp eyes, she managed to find a hidden four-winged white tiger. Even the Alliance was shaken. This was because the four-winged white tiger wasn't arranged by them. This further proved just how formidable Luo he was. He was actually able to discover a powerful monster beast that not even the Alliance beast trainers could find. The four-winged white tiger was a bloodline variant. It was absolutely rare in the world. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to describe it as formidable. By relying on this point, Luo, he was ranked first in the preliminary selections. Even if some people weren't convinced, they couldn't say anything. The white tiger bloodline was cruel and bloodthirsty to begin with, let alone a bloodline variant. Its temper wasn't a joke. If Luo, he could subdue it, this represented her strength. For a time, countless olive branches were thrown out, including those from the Beast Trainer Alliance. As long as Luo, he stretched out his hand, he could obtain wealth and status that ordinary people couldn't even imagine. Many of the conditions that were privately spread out left everyone dumbfounded. But Luo, he didn't agree to any of them. She only said that she would make a decision after the tournament ended. Just this point alone was enough to show his absolute confidence. At the same time, another piece of news began to spread. It was said that Luo, he wanted to revitalize the Tong province's Luo family and have it prosper once more. Thus, he hoped to represent the Luo family and recruit some elite beast trainers. As this news spread out, many people revealed fervent looks. With Luo He's performance, he was absolutely a powerful character. His future was limitless. If they could hold on as such a thigh, their future prospects would be bright. In particular, on Starfall Archipelago, a large portion of the participants weren't here to compete for rankings. Rather, their main goal was to display themselves. If they could catch the fancy of some formidable beast trainer, they could obtain a chance to change their destiny. For instance, the Shui sisters who had stolen identity information to sneak into Starfall Archipelago. They had both passed the preliminaries, but their rankings were ordinary. Shui swept her eyes over Qin Yu's name. She subconsciously bit her lips and looked away. Big sister, should we give a try? Shui Qingqing thought for a moment, and then slowly shook her head. There's no hurry. We'll decide after the semifinals. Shui nodded. The two sisters fell silent. They both saw Qin Yu's name. 89th place was indeed quite good. But as the two sisters thought of that figure, they unanimously agreed that he was hiding his strength, otherwise his ranking wouldn't be so low. Originally, Qin Yu was their best choice, but what a pity, Shui Qingqing sighed inwardly. 3 days after the preliminaries, the semifinals began. Qin Yu's guess wasn't wrong. The semifinals were related to the monster beasts that everyone chose during the preliminaries. This time, the requirement was for all participants to use materials from the same storehouse to strengthen the vitality of their monster beasts as much as possible in 10 days. Rankings would be determined based on how much vitality increased and how much it increased. Regarding this, the explanation given by the Alliance was that only by living long enough could one become stronger, because life had infinite possibilities. Moreover, vitality was lifespan. This was something that no life form would ever have too much of, and it was also the most difficult thing to increase. Of course, this was reasonable. Every participant was brought into a small room that was specially divided out. Before entering, they were reminded that they absolutely could not try to cheat. This was because all the materials in the storehouse had been specially marked. Once someone secretly used other materials, they would immediately be discovered. Even so, 3 days before the semifinals began, there were still many people who chose to take the risk. It was unknown whether or not they succeeded, but there were many who failed and were stripped of their qualifications. After the 3rd day, this sort of situation began to decrease. Perhaps it was because they couldn't find any shortcuts, so they could only rely on themselves. As a fake beast trainer, Qin Yu certainly didn't know how to do something as grand as increasing one's vitality. But he at least recognized some materials that could increase one's vitality. And the storehouse provided by the Alliance was mostly filled with these materials. There were many types of materials. Of course, the extent to which they could increase one's vitality was very small, so they weren't too precious. Even so, this was still considered a great deal. Many beast trainers sighed inwardly. The Alliance was truly overflowing with wealth. If so, then things became much simpler. However, in order to prevent others from noticing anything strange, Qin Yu still took out many materials. If he placed them together, it would be an absolute mess. Luckily, many beast trainers did this. Their goal was to prevent others from secretly learning their unique skills. Thus, Qin Yu wasn't conspicuous at all. He summoned the projection of the little blue lamp to strengthen and enhance the materials sent from the storehouse. To Qin Yu, the competition was just this simple. Of course, he had to avoid the red bird. When it came to the existence of the little blue lamp, there was no room for discussion. 10 days quickly passed. Because of the accident during the preliminaries, Qin Yu wasn't sure how much he should use. In the end, the red bird made the choice for him and ate up all the strength and materials. In any case, the red bird's ability to hide itself was quite good. Qin Yu solemnly reminded it not to show off too much. After Luo, he became famous. He was stripped clean and placed under a magnifying glass to observe. With this as an example, Qin Yu didn't want to draw attention to himself. After all, his current identity was fake. It was best if people noticed him as late as possible to avoid any accidents. The Beast Trainer Alliance operated at full speed. Even so, it took a full 5 days to sort out the ranking list of the semifinals. First place, Luo He. This time, there was no doubt that he was a genius. Everyone knew that from today onwards, A shining star had truly risen. Qin Yu found his name in 63rd place. He was very satisfied with this ranking. But soon, Qin Yu encountered something that he wasn't too satisfied with. The final selections will be carried out 5 days from now. Before this, Luo, he was the most dazzling existence in the entire Starfall archipelago. Countless people tried to visit or seek an audience with her, but only a small number of people were able to achieve their goal. Dongfang Han came from a noble background, and he was ranked 4th in the semifinals. This was more than enough to prove his formidable strength, and he naturally had the qualifications to be close to Luo He. The two of them met a few times. Dongfang Han, who had always been cold, was unexpectedly on good terms with the other party. After a while, they became friends. The 47th ranked semi-finalist, Su Hongyi, followed Dongfang Han as his younger sister. She was born beautiful, and in addition to her cute temperament, she quickly blended into the circle. The 3rd, 7th, 9th, 13th, anyone that stood out was an existence that was sought after by all. Sitting between them, Su Hongyi felt extremely good. She wasn't a particularly vain person, but then again, what kind of woman could be completely free from vanity? After another banquet, Su Hongyi separated from Dongfang Han and returned to her own courtyard. Only then did Su Hongyi regain her composure. She turned around and pounded on the opposite courtyard door. "Open up, open up. Big sister is back." The footsteps approached, and with a creak, the courtyard door opened from the inside, revealing Shuiya's silhouette in a black veil. She didn't even have the time to speak before she covered her chest with her hands and yelled angrily, "Su Hongyi, are you crazy now? I haven't seen you for 2 days, and it seems my beloved concubine has become even more experienced. Do you have any secret recipes to share with me?" Su Hongyi mischievously smiled as she squeezed through the crowd, scaring Shuiya into retreating again and again. She shouted, "My beloved concubine Qingqing, why aren't you welcoming me?" The Shui sisters who had arrived on the island had accidentally met Su Hongyi. Although they hadn't known each other for long, they had a very good relationship. If there was anything, they liked to talk about it. The two sisters didn't say much because they had something on their minds, but Su Hongyi was very carefree. For instance, during the preliminaries, she had encountered a vulgar man and told the two sisters everything. With today's experience worth bragging about, how could she possibly hold herself back? She immediately pulled the two sisters over and began to talk about it. From time to time, her fingers would intertwine in front of her, a love-struck expression on her face. Su Hongyi's strong point was that she said whatever came to her mind. She didn't give off the feeling that she was deliberately showing off. Rather, she seemed frank and sincere. The Shui sisters glanced at each other. Was there really such a coincidence? After hesitating for a moment, Shui Qingqing said, "Hongyi, I wonder if we could trouble you to introduce us sisters to Mr. Luo He?" "Ah, that's the matter." Su Hongyi frowned. "It's fine if it's difficult." Chapter 8:18. Before the final selection, Qin Yu had no choice but to bring Dorlise out to relax after hearing her mumbling. The reason was that these past few days had been extremely boring. If Qin Yu didn't agree, she would use her ultimate move. Seeing this woman lean back on the bed and pull up her clothes, revealing half of her shoulders, Qin Yu's complexion paled. He stood up and left. Doreli's smug laughter echoed from behind him. The more time they spent together, the more satisfied she became with this great puppet of hers. When the Alliance held the competition, in order to prevent a massive number of beast trainers from piling up and causing unnecessary trouble, they set up many entertainment events. As Qin Yu walked down the streets of Starfall Archipelago, there was a considerable flow of people. As Qin Yu stood to the side and waited for Dorlise to buy candy, he saw two semi-familiar figures. The reason he called them 2.5 was because 2 of them were the Shui family sisters. He could recognize them from their backs. As for the other one, she was wearing red clothes. He had only seen her once in the preliminaries. She was a very fierce young girl. How did these 3 people come together? Qin Yu saw them, but the 3 women didn't see him. They gathered together and whispered to each other for a moment before walking toward the club on the side of the street. On Starfall Archipelago, only those with a certain level of status could enter this or a clubhouse that gathered entertainment and enjoyment. Su Hongyi was qualified, but if she wanted to bring others in, she wasn't qualified enough. But she had Dongfang Han's membership card on her. She flashed it at the entrance, and the Alliance cultivators guarding the entrance respectfully drew back. Qin Yu watched as the three of them entered. Just as he was about to look away, several people hurried past him and inadvertently heard their conversation. His eyebrows furrowed together. Luo, later on. Qin Yu had seen this person from afar during the semifinals. With a single glance, he recognized that Luo, he was the middle-aged man he saw on the first day he entered the island. The two of them had never met before, and this person's aura was strange. But for some unknown reason, Qin Yu had a bad feeling about this person. Or it was more accurate to say that if this person brought his handsome face closer to him, Qin Yu would have ruthlessly slapped him. There was no reason. It was just pure dislike and disgust. Several people had said that Luo, he, and the other outstanding characters of the competition would be holding a banquet in this club. Now that the Shui sisters had gone in, could it be because of him? With the information he had, the more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. For better or worse, they had known each other for some time and had gone through trials and tribulations together. The sisters even called him Big Brother Qin, so should he remind them? But that day, he looked as if he was afraid that others would get involved with him and hurriedly took his leave. What was he trying to do now? As Qin Yu was hesitating, someone patted his shoulder. Hey, you have to be careful when looking at beauties. Your eyeballs are about to pop out. Dorlice licked the candy and looked at him with an amused expression. Qin Yu glared at her. If you're done buying, then leave. How old are you? You're still eating this kind of thing. I'm happy. Why do you care? Dorlice sneered. Her eyes turned, and she suddenly said, I'm tired from walking. I want to rest. Let's go there. After saying that, he walked straight ahead. Yindai was also holding a candy figurine in her hand. As she heard Qin Yu's words, she didn't know whether to eat it or throw it away. Her heart was in a dilemma. Qin Yu glanced at her. Eat it. He turned and followed behind. Looking at Dorlice's back, he wasn't sure if she had noticed something or if it was just an accident. Without surprise, Dorlice was stopped in front of the clubhouse. Although her beauty made one's legs go weak, the several Alliance cultivators guarding the door didn't dare to let her in because of this. That was a joke with their jobs. Dorlice turned her head in embarrassment. She angrily said, Qin Yu, hurry and let me in. The gatekeeper's eyes brightened. Are you Mr. Qin Yu, the 89th place finalist? Seeing Qin Yu nod, the gatekeeper smiled. Mr. Qin, are you here to participate in the banquet hosted by Mr. Luo He on the 8th floor? If so, you can go in and speak with Mr. Luo He. Then, you can bring in all of your companions. His words were polite, but as he thought about it, the truth was that besides Qin Yu, no one else here had the qualifications to enter. Qin Yu shrugged. You see, I can't bring anyone in. Let's go. Dorlice clenched her teeth. No, I want to go in. Qin Yu, think of a way. Standing on the side, the silent old Lin suddenly said, I have a way. He took out a card. The gatekeeper glanced at it, and his complexion immediately changed. He respectfully invited the 4 people in. After the 4 people disappeared from the entrance, the gatekeeper immediately said through an internal communication array formation, the Heaven Step card guests have arrived. Hurry and welcome them. After leaving the elevator, a female manager of the clubhouse was already waiting outside with a bright smile. I didn't know that several honored guests had arrived. I ask that you forgive me for not going out to greet you. Qin Yu glanced at old Lin. He wasn't surprised by this. After all, with his status, it was only natural for him to act like this. Although she knew that old Lin would be the one holding the card, the female manager had been responsible for managing the clubhouse for many years and had long since developed a pair of fiery golden eyes. She could see that Qin Yu was the core of the group, and her smile became increasingly bright. May I ask what the honored guests need today? Before Qin Yu could speak, Dorlice said, I heard that there's a banquet being held on the 8th floor. Can we go? The female manager looked at her, and her heart chilled. She suddenly discovered that her eyesight needed some time to improve. From Dorelis's actions, she could see that she was absolutely a top character. The free and easy temperament she exuded was absolutely impossible to fake. She respectfully said, "Reporting to Mr. La and the others are holding a banquet on the 8th floor. Their original intention was to meet friends from all over. Several groups of guests have already gone to join in on the fun. If the 4 of you go, you will definitely be welcomed." "Then let's go to the 8th floor." Seeing Qin Yu's calm expression, the female manager respectfully said, "All right." She personally led the way. After entering the elevator, the 4 people arrived outside the banquet hall on the 8th floor. There were several guards standing at the entrance. Seeing that their big sister was leading the way, they didn't dare to say a single word. They respectfully bowed and let them through. The banquet hall was very large, and they adopted an open buffet style. Dorelis's eyes shined as she ran towards the long dining table. Yindai gulped. She swept her eyes around the venue and couldn't help but secretly click her tongue at today's banquet. She had only heard of many of the ingredients on the table. Only old Lin had a calm expression, as if he weren't surprised at all. He didn't say anything at all. Qin glanced at Yindai. "Take whatever you want to eat. In any case, you don't need to pay, so don't be polite." Yindai awkwardly smiled. In the end, she couldn't resist the temptation of delicious food. She picked up the tray and walked away, her eyes bright. Qin picked up a cup of wine and took a small sip. The taste wasn't bad. Then, he casually found a corner and stood there. "Old Lin, your actions today were a bit careless." The Qin family's nameless bastard son was actually together with someone with an Astral Fate Society card. As long as someone noticed this, they would definitely be suspicious. Old Lin had a calm expression. "It's fine. With your current status, you have the qualifications to be won over by others. It's fine if you occasionally step out of line." After a pause, he continued to say, "Moreover, even if someone really investigates, they won't find anything because this card is fake." Qin nearly spat out the wine in his mouth. He had thought of countless possibilities, but he never expected this to be the result. He looked at the wine in his hand and then at Dorlis and Yundai, who were happily eating. Was this considered cheating others to eat and drink? If this was discovered, would he still have the face to continue participating in the competition? Old Lin said, "Don't worry, there won't be any problems with the card. I will find a place to sit down. You don't need to worry about me." "Don't need to worry about me?" It seemed that the look in his eyes had already been noticed. Whatever, if they saw, then they saw. Qin picked up his cup of wine. He swept his eyes around and found the Shui sisters who had arrived first. They really were here. In these past days, Luo he had already encountered many people who hoped to approach him through connections. As long as their recommendation was sufficient, he would meet with most of them. So when Dongfang Ha mentioned it, he smiled and agreed. He originally only wanted to give Dongfang Han some face, but he never imagined that he would be incomparably satisfied. He could not be satisfied. Just smelling the scent of the Shui sisters caused his heartbeat to quicken. Luck. This was definitely luck. This was an unexpected harvest. Luo he didn't pretend to be reserved. Instead, he raised a cup of wine to the 2 sisters and smiled. "Today, I welcome you two to join us. From now on, we are one family." Su Hongyi had heard Dongfang Ha mention that Luo he had extremely high standards. She never imagined that things would go so smoothly. She immediately smiled and pushed Shui Qingqing. "Beloved concubine, how will you thank me for this?" Shui Qingqing blushed. She glared at her and stood up with her little sister. "Then from now on, I'll have to ask Mr. Luo he to take care of me." Before the 2 sides could finish their cups of wine, they were interrupted by a sudden commotion. Luo he, who was in a good mood, frowned. What happened? 2 brightly dressed youths with pale faces were lying on the ground, clutching their genitals and howling in pain. Looking at their trembling bodies, one could imagine how heavy the attack just now had been. Many men subconsciously felt their hearts turn cold, and they shrunk back. Across from them, Dorlis placed her hands on her hips and cursed, You two bastards, you actually dared to drug me. Are you looking to die? Hearing these words, everyone's complexions changed. In particular, the several extraordinary individuals that participated in the banquet all had gloomy expressions. The reason they came to this banquet was mainly to communicate with each other and expand their networks. If news of someone drugging a woman were to spread, what would happen to their reputation? Even if this had nothing to do with them, they would still be tainted with the smell of sex. Chinyu put down his wine cup. He passed through the crowd and walked to Dorella's side. He whispered, "What kind of demon are you playing at this time?" She turned her head and moved closer to his ear. Dorlise whispered, "You have no conscience. They were drugged, and you don't care at all?" Chinyu was expressionless. "I think the ones I should be more concerned about are those two brothers on the ground. Don't try to act innocent after taking advantage of them. I've already given you a chance. Whether or not you want to interfere is up to you." Dorlise wiped her eyes and hugged Chinyu. "Chinyu, you have to uphold justice for me." With a few words, she pushed all the blame away. As Chinyu looked at the sobbing and crying Dorlise, he was left speechless for a second. Then, he discovered that everyone's eyes were on him. Shuiyi's heart trembled. Just as she was about to say something, she was pulled back by Shui Qingqing, who gently shook her head. A man passed through the crowd and arrived in front of the two people on the ground. As he looked at their condition, his complexion became increasingly ugly. He turned to Chinyu. "Who are you? Why have you appeared here?" Chinyu looked at him, his expression calm. "Who are you? You don't know me? Then listen well, my name is Xia Gong." With a callous expression, he pointed at the two people on the ground. "These two are my friends. I can guarantee that with their backgrounds, they would never do anything that would damage their reputation." Xia Gong's eyes were icy cold. "I'm warning you, don't try to disturb the banquet. Otherwise, you won't be able to bear the consequences." The banquet hall was silent. Those who had the qualifications to speak didn't know what the truth was, but Xia Gong's current actions were clearly in line with their interests. Feeling this silence, Xia Gong's confidence increased. He looked at Chinyu as if he were looking at grass. "Speak. You deliberately try to frame me and stir up trouble. What is your goal?" His words suddenly changed. Chinyu looked at him, his face expressionless. "Are you so sure that I can't provoke you?" Xia Gong sneered. "In the semifinals, you are ranked 89th. Chinyu, you do have some capital, but I am ranked 16th. Immediately apologize to my friend and leave with this woman. Otherwise, I guarantee you will regret it." He just so happened to have some information on Chinyu. After glancing at it and hearing Dorelis' words, he had already recognized Chinyu. If it weren't for this, how could he act so impulsively in this sort of banquet? 16th against 89th, of course he would be crushed in all aspects. As for the tiny Qin family, with his background, he didn't need to worry about them. As Luo, he saw Chinyu, his eyebrows furrowed imperceptibly. Then, he composed himself and said, "Those that can come to the 8th floor are my guests. There must be some misunderstanding here. Mr. Xia Gong, please give me some face and don't pursue this any further." Xia Gong sneered. "Consider yourself lucky." He turned and cupped his hands together. "Since Mr. Luo, he has spoken, I will naturally comply." Chinyu looked up and met Luo He's eyes. After a brief pause, he pulled Dorlise and turned to leave. Everyone's eyes revealed a playful light. They thought that his words just now were quite imposing, but it turned out he was just a wax spear. However, in this sort of situation, it was normal for him to lower his head. After all, this was only the 89th semifinal. In front of Xia Gong, he wasn't even worth mentioning. Yindai gloomily walked over to Chinyu's side. She was a bit angry, but when she remembered that her teacher had told her to keep a low profile, she could only reluctantly endure it. Dorlise didn't resist. She wiped away her teary eyes and whispered in Chinyu's ear, "Are you really going to leave like this? How shameful." Chinyu ignored her. When they arrived at the entrance of the banquet hall, he suddenly stopped and turned. He looked at the Shui family sisters and asked, "You two don't want to leave together?" Shui Qingqing and Shui Yiya were stunned for a moment, but they soon responded. Without hesitation, they stood up and placed down their wine glasses. They bowed to Luo He and then quickly crossed the banquet hall to Qin Yu's side. Everyone was dumbfounded. They watched helplessly as the group of 6 left, their hearts in chaos. Luo He was expressionless. Her fists clenched and loosened within her sleeves, but in the end she didn't say anything to stop them. Now wasn't the time. From a moment, Su Hongyi recognized Qin Yu. She had been excited. When Luo He had stepped forward to stop Xiaogong, she had been disappointed for a long time. She had thought that seeing this vulgar man slip away would be enough to vent her anger. But who would have thought that the situation would suddenly reverse? Looking at the backs of the Shui family sisters, her lips moved but no sound came out. Chapter 819. In front of everyone, Qin Yu had brought the Shui family sisters away. This had nearly caused Luo He to lose all face, and he began to have a headache. He felt that he was a bit too soft-hearted. They were just strangers that had met by chance. So why did he have to make things difficult for himself? Disregarding whether or not his performance today would arouse the suspicions of others. Just how could Qin Yu deal with the Shui family sisters that were following him? You can't just turn around and leave them to fend for themselves just because you said you'd bring them along. Qin Yu took a deep breath and stopped. The people behind him seemed to know what he was going to do, and they all stopped in unison. Senior Lin glanced at Qin Yu. His eyes flashed for a moment before he composed himself. But Qin Yu knew that this old fellow who didn't reveal his emotions must have some opinions about him. For instance, his luck with women, or something like that. Yindai tried her best to remain calm and composed, but she couldn't conceal the sadness in her eyes. She had an expression that said, "How can teacher do this?" Dorelis's mocking smile hung on her face without any attempt to hide it. She glanced at Qin Yu, as if saying, "Let's see how you'll continue pretending in the future." Qin Yu felt an even greater headache. He rubbed his temples, ignoring their expressions. He thought that he was just doing what he wanted, so he didn't care about their random thoughts. His eyes fell on the Shui family sisters. Qin Yu thought for a moment and slowly said, "This Luo, he isn't as simple as he seems on the surface. If you follow him, I fear there will be problems." He called them out with just a few words and ruined their good fortune. Disregarding everything else, this explanation was necessary. But this explanation was a bit too far-fetched. Without any evidence, did he think there was a problem just because he thought there was? But unexpectedly, the Shui family sisters didn't say anything. They nodded and believed him. Senior Lin's eyes flashed, and Yundai became even more grieved. Dorelis's taunting skills were fully activated. Qin Yu was left speechless. Why were the two of them so easy to talk to? At least ask a few questions, but now it was even harder to explain himself. But in the end, it was because the two sisters trusted him that he did this. Could he blame them? Qin Yu rubbed his nose and coughed. But as he saw the Shui family sisters' expectant eyes, he couldn't bring himself to speak. After thinking about it again and again, he sighed in his heart. "I don't know what problems the two of you have encountered, but even if you want to find a backer, you have to make a clear judgment. You can't be impatient and blindly rush. For now, you can stay on the island with peace of mind. If there are any problems, we can talk about it after the competition. How about it?" Shuiya blurted out, "Okay." Her eyes sparkled. If it weren't for her big sister holding her back, she would have thrown herself into Qin Yu's arms. Clearwood, Qingqing respectfully bowed. "Big brother Qin, our residence is at the East District's 37th courtyard. You can ask around and you'll be able to find it. Us sisters won't be going out anytime soon. We wish Big Brother Qin a good result in the final selection." After he finished speaking, he pulled the reluctant Shui Yi away. Even a blind man could smell her reluctance to part with him. She kept looking back until they disappeared, and even a blind man could smell her reluctance. "Big Brother Qin, TSK, this form of address is so sweet that it makes it difficult for one to breathe." Dorley's patted Qin Yu's shoulder. "Be honest. Just what did you do to those sisters that they are so docile and obedient? You have the final say in everything." Qin Yu was expressionless. He simply explained the process of how he met the Shui family sisters. He didn't give Dorlies a chance to continue pestering him and laugh at him. He looked straight at her and said, "Me interfering in this matter can barely be considered helping an old friend. But what about you? Don't tell me you just wanted to watch the fun and cooperated with me to put on such a show." Elder Lin's eyes narrowed. He was also incomparably curious about this point. Dorlice was unexpectedly honest. She shrugged and said, "It's simple. You don't think that Luo, he is right. I also don't like him." She frowned as if she were preparing her words. Then she continued to say, "That person has an imposing appearance and a good appearance. His gentle smile is very charming, but I just feel that something is wrong with him. If I wasn't sure that I've never met his aura before, I would have thought that this fellow was an enemy of mine who had changed his appearance to deal with me." This statement sounded ridiculous, but Chinyu immediately believed it. This was because he also had the same feeling. Although he thought this, he didn't reveal anything on his face. He glanced at Dorlice, non-committal, and then turned to leave. "I've been out long enough. Let's go back." It was only after he was far away that Dorlice regained her composure. That slippery Chinyu had led the conversation astray again. She still hadn't figured out his relationship with those two young beauties. "Stop. Don't run." Without looking back, Chinyu quickened his steps as he heard this. The final selections arrived as scheduled. This time, those that had the qualifications to participate were only those ranked in the top 100 of the semifinals. The number of people had sharply decreased, and there was no longer the oppressive feeling of endless darkness. But the attention paid to the final selections didn't decrease because of the decrease in numbers. Rather, it reached an unprecedented peak. Whether it was the Beast Trainer Alliance or the cultivators that came from all over, they were all waiting for the final victor to appear. The 100 final selections participants stood in the square, listening to the Alliance Elder explain the rules. Because of the array formation, his voice was clearly transmitted into everyone's ears. "In this final selections, we will use a disorderly competition method. The jade tokens that were returned to you just now have been modified. After you enter the final selection arena, no matter what method you use, as long as you could defeat 9 opponents and seize their jade tokens and maintain this until the end of the competition, you can become one of the top 10 participants of the competition. Of course, each person can only possess 10 jade tokens at the same time. Once you complete the competition, you cannot obtain any more. Here, I would like to remind everyone that there are certain risks in the final selection arena. If you feel that you cannot cope, it is best to withdraw as soon as possible. As long as you shout to the skies that you withdraw from the competition, you will immediately be transferred out to avoid unnecessary injuries." As Chinyu was listening carefully, he frowned and turned to the side. Several people away, Su Hongyi's eyes met his. The moment their eyes met, she wrinkled her nose and lightly humphed. She turned her head away, a look of disdain on her face. Beside her, Dongfang Han frowned. As he looked at Chinyu, there was a bit of coldness in his eyes. Chinyu didn't care about any of this. His eyes fell on Luohi. His intuition told him that this person knew he was looking at her. But from start to finish, Luohi's eyes remained closed, not expressing anything at all. Disdain? Chinyu didn't think so. Perhaps this person didn't want his thoughts to be seen through his eyes. Thinking back to what Dorlice had said about how she found Luohi displeasing to the eye, Chinyu expressionlessly looked away. A bit of coldness surged in his heart. It would be best if they could live in harmony. He didn't want to provoke trouble. Otherwise, he would take this chance to figure out just where this hostility towards Luohi came from. As Chinyu's thoughts raced, the Alliance Elder's words reached the end. "The final selections have begun. I wish everyone a good result." In the square, a giant array formation opened. A strong light erupted, causing space to twist. According to the guidance of the Alliance cultivators, the 100 final selections cultivators stepped into the array formation, one after another. Their figures twisted and they vanished from sight. Chinyu had a calm expression. The tearing strength around him had no effect on him at all. After a moment, when everything calmed down and he opened his eyes, he discovered that he was in a cave. He wasn't too far from the entrance of the cave. He could see a weak light sprinkling in from the outside. Chinyu swept his divine sense around. After determining that there wasn't anything wrong, he flew out from the cave. Rumble, rumble, the light suddenly brightened. A sea breeze blew against his face, carrying with it a slightly salty smell. A massive wave crashed into the cliff, smashing into it. Looking down, he could see that the mountain was 100,000 feet high. All he could see was black seawater. A giant seabird spread its wings in the wind, its sharp eyes suddenly locking onto Chinyu. Perhaps to this seabird, Chinyu, who had suddenly emerged from the cave, was no different from a large fish in the sea. He was food that it could hunt. But unfortunately, it had chosen the wrong target today. Chinyu lifted his hand, his fingers spreading apart. A formidable strength gushed out from the air, wrapping around the seabird like an invisible swamp. Its eyes revealed fear. It struggled with all its might and cried out, but it couldn't escape. With a step, Chinyu landed on its back. He lifted it up and the seabird wailed. It flapped its wings and flew upwards. Who? The seabird carried Chinyu on its back. At a nearly straight angle, it stuck close to the cliff and howled out. But at this time, Chinyu, who was sitting on the seabird's back, retreated like a bolt of lightning. In the next moment, a black shadow rushed forwards and bit off the seabird's neck. It didn't even have time to cry out before it died where it stood. The one that had bitten the seabird to death was a monster beast shaped like a cheetah. It had 2 tails and a pair of dark yellow eyes. It glared at Chinyu and made threatening noises. Chinyu remained expressionless. He allowed the monster beast to drag the seabird's corpse away, leaving behind a trail of blood on the ground as it vanished from sight. However, it was clear that the fresh smell of blood had attracted other hunters. It wouldn't be easy for this cheetah monster beast to swallow up all the food for itself. In the thick mountain forest, there was a sudden roar, followed by a loud explosion. Standing on the edge of the cliff, you could clearly feel the ground beneath him trembling. The struggle didn't continue for too long before it ended. Without surprise, the seabird had been cleanly eaten. In the shadows of the mountain forest, giant eyes appeared, cold and cruel as they locked onto Chinyu. But in the end, not a single monster beast rushed out. After a brief standoff, they all retreated deep into the forest. Chinyu frowned. This was the Alliance's final selection field, and there didn't seem to be anything related to beast trainers. Was this a competition of cultivation? Compared to the exquisiteness and depth of the preliminaries and semifinals, it seemed a bit too crude. Whatever, there was no point in thinking so much. Since the rules of the competition had been set, he should hurry up and think of a way to obtain the 9 participation tokens. Shwa, his figure flashed, and Chinyu drilled into the forest, vanishing from sight. Starfall Archipelago. As the participants of the final selection entered the competition field, a high-level alliance conference was being held. Besides the several elders presiding over the opening ceremony, all the high-level alliance figures were present. In the grand and magnificent conference hall of the alliance, the dome of the heavens was propped up by giant stone pillars. There was a round gap in the middle that allowed light to shine in, falling onto the round platform in the center of the hall. All the high-level alliance figures participating in the conference were bathed in this light. Every minute expression on their faces was clearly illuminated. The one presiding over the conference was the current president of the alliance, a legendary existence amongst beast trainers, Biggie Douglas. This was a formidable existence with a variation bloodline. He had a head of brilliant golden hair that burned like golden flames beneath the sunlight. Everyone, the reason the Alliance is holding an emergency meeting today is to respond to the recent internal disputes. I admit that there is a certain amount of risk in the final selection's battlefield arrangements. Perhaps some of our outstanding beast trainers will be injured. But I must remind everyone that this is a choice we must make in a situation where we have no other choice. That being in the sea has already taken action. We cannot determine whether or not it has other methods. Even if we have to pay a certain price, we must eliminate all dangers. Douglas's calm voice echoed through the conference hall. His voice was calm and dignified, but also carried with it an unquestionable strength. After a long period of silence, an alliance elder said, "The final selection has already begun. Isn't it too late for Sir President to hold a meeting now?" Douglas replied in a deep voice, "Yes." He looked around and took in everyone's expressions. Convening the alliance's meeting at this moment was a decision made by me and the other vice presidents. If anyone has any objections, they can follow the alliance's procedures to impeach us. For this matter and all the consequences it may cause, I, Biggie Douglas, along with the several vice presidents, are willing to bear all responsibility. The three vice presidents stood up at the same time. They said in a low voice, "We are willing to bear all responsibility." Qin Yu obtained the first participant token. His opponent was ranked 39th in the semifinals. The moment this person saw Qin Yu, he revealed an excited expression. It was clear he had already investigated the final selection list ahead of time. However, 39's excitement only lasted for 3 breaths of time. His eyes widened, turning into shock and unwillingness. The 2 monster beasts that this person summoned instantly died on the spot. When Qin Yu approached him with a bloody aura, 39 didn't even have time to respond before he was knocked unconscious by a single punch. After taking the participant token, the space around 39 slightly twisted. His figure vanished as he was transmitted away. Contrary to Qin Yu's expectations, after this token entered his hand, it turned into powder. As for his original token, 2 dots of light appeared. After looking at it several times, Qin Yu put away the token. Then he looked at the 2 monster beasts that had been killed on the spot, a thoughtful look in his eyes. He tried to summon the purple-back blue-wing ants in the competition field. In other words, these 2 monster beasts were subdued by 39 after he entered the competition field. Qin Yu felt that he had grasped the key to the final selection. Although he hadn't been here for too long, he had encountered an astonishing number of monster beasts along the way. There were even some tyrannical existences among them. If a powerful beast trainer was given enough time, even if they were alone, they could quickly raise a formidable monster beast army. The smell of blood wafted through the air. It would soon attract hungry hunters. Qin Yu's thoughts raced several times. Then, he stepped forwards and rapidly flew away. Qin Yu discovered that his 89th place result in the semifinals was quite confusing. He didn't even need to look for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th participant tokens. They were delivered to him on their own initiative. But after he obtained the 4th token, a change occurred. Qin Yu looked down at the 5 dots of light on his participant token. As he felt the powerful aura they released, he revealed a helpless expression. As he thought, it wasn't so easy to pass the final selection. As the number of tokens increased, the tokens themselves would release a powerful aura that could be sensed. In the eyes of the other participants, it was like a torch in the darkness. Once they sensed Qin Yu approaching, they would often flee from far away, not giving him a chance to attack. Moreover, from another perspective, as the number of tokens increased, the aura of the tokens would become increasingly strong. At that time, they would definitely become the target of everyone. After all, as long as everyone joined forces to kill one, they would be able to gather 10 tokens. As Qin Yu was frowning, his complexion suddenly changed. He looked up in front of him. He could sense another powerful aura. When Qin Yu sensed the other party also sensed him. After a brief pause, they hurried over. Narrowing his eyes, Qin Yu moved forwards to meet the other party. The distance between them rapidly shortened. Shua. Chapter 820. Taking a step forwards, Dongfang Han cupped his hands together. Let me formally introduce myself. My name is Dongfang Han, and I come from the Azure Province's Dongfang bloodline. Qin Yu hesitated for a moment. I am Qin Yu from the Western Tombs Qin family. Dongfang Han nodded. Then we could be considered acquaintances. Here, I apologize to you on behalf of Hongi. She is a simple and pure girl. If she has offended you in any way before, I ask that Mr. Qin Yu does not bother with her. Qin Yu's mind flashed with the image of that fierce red-clothed girl. He scratched his head in confusion. Was this a form of reconciliation? I have never taken this matter to heart. Mr. Dongfang, please rest assured. Dongfang Han's expression was cold, and he rarely revealed any emotions. But at this time, he revealed a faint smile. It was clear that he did care about Su Hongyi. But then, Qinyu was caught off guard. Dongfang Han looked up, his eyes shining with a piercing light. Then, we can make our move now. What situation was this? Wasn't this supposed to be reconciliation? Qinyu was stunned for a long time before he managed to regain his composure. This Dongfang boy was simply worried that today's matters would be blamed on Su Hongyi, thus he had said those words. Even in this situation, Qinyu didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. How did you know that what I said was true? But soon, Qinyu revealed a dignified expression. He could feel a threat coming from Dongfang Han. It was like invisible needles were stabbing into his flesh, making him feel waves of pain. Stepping down, Dongfang Han rushed forwards. At this moment, he changed from an iceberg to an erupting volcano. A wild aura broke out from his body. The air violently twisted, and one could faintly hear the roars of a great beast. A beast phantom with 4 limbs and 2 horns on its head appeared above Qinyu's head. As Dongfang Han punched out, the beast phantom howled and fused into it. Qinyu's eyes were dignified. He didn't dodge at all. His feet continued to fall. Facing this wild aura, he was like a flood dragon swimming against the current. Bang! There was a heaven-shaking explosion. A terrifying shockwave of strength instantly erupted. It was like a raging flood, destroying everything in its path. The ground was easily plowed open. The soil and stones were mixed together and crushed into fine powder, rolling and whistling forward. The ancient tree beneath Qinyu's feet was torn apart, followed by a second, a third. It was like a meteor falling from the skies. With the 2 of them at the center, destructive fluctuations spread outwards. Qinyu was forced backwards again and again. Every step he took caused the earth to rumble, diverting the powerful strength that his mortal body had to withstand. On the other side, Dongfang Han's toes touched the ground as he retreated explosively. Wherever his figure passed, the ground would split open and form a giant gorge. On the surface, they were evenly matched in their first exchange. Dongfang Han's eyes shone even brighter. He didn't pause for even a moment. After dispelling the remaining power of this strike, he stomped down like a tiger descending a mountain. Roar! Between heaven and earth, the roar of a giant beast suddenly erupted, and another giant beast phantom slowly appeared behind him. Who would have thought that Dongfang Han, who had a cold and aloof aura, would cultivate such a violent and domineering cultivation technique? As the 2 of them fought, their auras burst forth and swept through the surroundings. It was like a hurricane in the ocean. Even though they were far away, they could clearly feel it. An azure-robed cultivator condensed a rune in his palm and sent it into the body of the demonic beast in front of him. His heart relaxed, and he revealed a look of joy. Success! In order to subdue this demonic beast, he had wasted a great deal of time. Nearly all the other demonic beasts he had subdued before had been killed in the process. But as long as he could subdue this demonic beast, everything was worth it. Now, it's time to reveal my true strength. I will definitely have a place in the qualifications to enter the mystic realm. As the azure-robed cultivator muttered to himself, he put away the demonic beast. Just as he was about to leave, his complexion suddenly changed. He looked up at the distant mountains. Even though there was a mountain range separating them, it still couldn't stop the terrifying aura that was constantly spreading out from the other side. Powerhouses were fighting. The azure-robed cultivator's eyes brightened. If there weren't enough benefits, powerhouses of this level absolutely wouldn't engage in a conflict. It was likely that both sides had a considerable number of participation tokens on them. As long as they defeated each other, they would be able to obtain 10 tokens. If it were before, the azure-robed cultivator might not have dared to join in on the fun. But now that he had subdued this demonic beast, his confidence rose. After a moment of hesitation, the azure-robed cultivator's figure flickered, and he raced towards the distant mountain range. The black wolf galloped through the forest. Its body was strong, and its eyes were proud. Powerful demonic energy surged around its body, and its every move revealed the aura of a beast king. But now, it was riding an ordinary-looking cultivator. On its shoulder was a golden-clawed, golden-eyed eagle. Although its body was less than 3 feet long, the aura it released was faintly stronger than the black wolf's. At this moment, the eagle's eyes were locked onto the distance. The ordinary-looking cultivator turned around and whispered a few words. The eagle let out a low cry. The two seemed to be communicating. That direction, the ordinary-looking cultivator pointed. The black wolf roared, and its figure instantly sped up, disappearing from sight in the blink of an eye. At the same time, many other cultivators could feel the terrifying aura of the battle. Let's go and see if there's a chance to fish in troubled waters. Such a commotion will definitely attract a large number of cultivators. I don't dare to have any ideas about them, but I can take the opportunity to steal someone else's token. Hurry up and leave. I don't have the qualifications to interfere in a battle between powerhouses like this. Everyone made different choices, but after a brief moment of hesitation, they gathered from all directions. If they ran into some dogshit luck, they might be able to pick up a great bargain. Although the chances weren't high, there was always a possibility. Dongfang Han, 3rd place in the semifinals. He is a genius of the Dongfang family and is rumored to be extremely strong. Who is that? He can actually compete with Dongfang Han, and I don't even have the slightest impression of him. I've seen this person before. At a banquet not too long ago, he was the one who slapped Luo He's face in front of everyone. He really isn't ordinary. At the edge of the battlefield, participants stopped one after another. They looked at the changes occurring on the battlefield, their eyes filled with amazement. Bang! After another collision, Qin Yu frowned. He looked at Dongfang Han across from him. Dongfang Han's complexion was pale. It was clear he had consumed a great deal of energy. But the threat Qin Yu felt didn't weaken at all. Rather, it became even more intense. It was clear he hadn't used his trump card yet. Although Qin Yu also had a trump card in his hand, once he used it, it would draw a great deal of attention and stir up other troubles. Thinking of this, Qin Yu's frown deepened. But what he didn't know was that across from him, Dongfang Han was 10 times more shocked and 10 times more hesitant than Qin Yu. Through lucky chances and coincidences, he had obtained tremendous benefits in his early years of cultivation. With the full support of the Dongfang family, he was able to have his current achievements. He never imagined that a mere disciple of the Qin family would be evenly matched with him. Even after fighting for so long, he hadn't been able to obtain the slightest advantage. Moreover, what left Dongfang Han feeling even more dread was that he could feel a deeply hidden and terrifying aura coming from Qin Yu's body. It was like crimson magma flowing beneath a layer of ice. Dongfang Han wasn't sure what this was, but he knew that once it erupted, it would surely be earth-shaking. Even if he had a trump card in his hand, he didn't have much confidence he could defeat Qin Yu. Moreover, if he used his trump card, it would cause a tremendous loss to him. In the final selection, once he fell into a weakened state, even if he won in the end, it would only be a wedding dress for others. His thoughts raced. Dongfang Han slowly looked up, his eyes meeting Qin Yu's. Without needing to communicate, he immediately understood the other's meaning. This sort of feeling was quite wonderful. Qin Yu thought for a moment and slowly nodded. Bang! Bang! Their auras erupted. But this time, they didn't rush at each other. Instead, they turned around and flew backwards. In the dark, the participants that were watching the two fight felt their hearts shrink and their complexions change. This is bad. Hurry and run. Run. With loud shouts, figures began to flee into the distance. The reason Qin Yu fought with Dongfang Han was to seize a participation token and become the final victor of the final selection. This was the key point. If one side could easily win, then there was nothing to say. But since everyone had scruples, there was no need to fight to the death. After all, there wasn't any deep hatred between them. There was also another point. The two of them now had a better choice. Among the cultivators that had been drawn here, there were several that had fairly strong auras. As long as they could kill off 2 of them, it wouldn't be difficult to gather enough tokens. How hateful. These two people set a trap. They deliberately led us here. Many cultivators cursed it out loud as they fled, feeling as if they had been fooled. The blue-robed cultivator was expressionless. He left behind a series of afterimages as he raced forwards at an astonishing speed. If there was an opportunity, he didn't mind attacking. But in a direct confrontation, if he wasn't careful, others might take advantage of him. In this sort of situation, he certainly didn't want to become a target. But soon, the blue-robed cultivator's complexion changed. He could feel an icy cold aura locking onto him from afar. It had actually chosen him as its target. The blue-robed cultivator sneered inwardly. He turned his head, a look of panic on his face. His aura rose once more, and he sped up even more. Whoosh! He immediately overtook everyone and fled into the distance. After a brief pause, the icy cold aura that had locked onto him accelerated, chasing after him without hesitation. Everyone dodged. In addition to the two people's astonishing speed, they soon vanished from their senses. A moment later, the blue-robed cultivator swept his eyes around. He took a step forward and came to a sudden stop. He slowly turned around, his expression grim. This distance should be safe enough. As long as he was a bit faster, there shouldn't be any problems. Whoosh! With the sound of breaking air, Chinyu landed on the ground. He lightly said, "You aren't planning on running away?" The blue-robed cultivator sneered. "I admit that you are strong, but if you want to take away the token in my hand, I fear you aren't qualified." He lifted a hand, and a monster beast he had just subdued appeared. Now that he was closer, he discovered that it was actually a small fox. Its gray fur was a mess, and there were even several burn marks on it. It seemed a bit dispirited. What was strange was that a third eye had opened between the eyes of this gray fox. It was vertical from top to bottom, and its surface was dark red. At this time, the gray fox was staring at Chinyu. The third eye on its forehead trembled and then slowly opened. It was a deep red. The gray fox's third eye seemed to hide an entire sea of blood. When its gaze fell on Chinyu, his mind was instantly dragged in. Chinyu's complexion changed. But before he could respond, he froze in place, his eyes empty and lifeless. It was like he had lost his soul. The blue-robed cultivator revealed a happy expression. He had succeeded. Without any hesitation, he took a step forward and howled forwards. Looking at Chinyu's dazed appearance, a trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. Then it turned to ruthlessness. The gray fox was his greatest trump card. The fewer people that knew about it, the better. Moreover, with today's conflict, if they met again in the future, they would surely be enemies. This Chinyu had been hiding his abilities even during the semifinals. From this, it could be seen that he was an ambitious person with great ambitions. Now that his plans had been ruined, he definitely wouldn't give up. Bang! The blue-robed cultivator punched out a fist. His fist was wrapped in flames as it smashed down towards Chinyu's forehead. Die! Bang! With a dull thumping sound, the blue-robed cultivator's chest instantly caved in. His eyes popped open and bulged out. In the next moment, he was sent flying backwards at an even faster speed. Several ancient trees behind him were torn apart by a powerful shockwave before he could even crash into them. After flying a long distance, he crashed into a stone wall. The blue-robed cultivator's body was embedded in the wall, and cracks spread out like a spider web. The sound of footsteps approached. Chinyu stood in front of the blue-robed cultivator, his expression faint. "You wanted to kill me first, so don't blame others." The blue-robed cultivator's lips moved, but he didn't say a single word. Dark red blood gushed out from every orifice of his head, and his head tilted to the side as he died on the spot. Chinyu's sudden eruption of fist had scattered apart all of the blue-robed cultivator's vitality. He didn't even have the chance to admit defeat and leave the martial field. Without expression, Chinyu didn't feel any pity for what had happened. He stepped forwards and found a token on the blue-robed cultivator's body. With a light, cracking sound, the token disintegrated into powder. Then, for more dots of light appeared on his own token. With 9 tokens in hand, He only lacked one more spot, and he would be able to obtain one of the final 10 spots. At this time, Qin Yu's eyebrows shot up. He looked at the token in his hand, surprise in his eyes. For such a change to occur after collecting all 9 tokens was beyond his expectations. But thinking about it, anyone that could obtain all 9 tokens was bound to be incredibly strong. If the aura released by the token was too strong and he couldn't obtain the last one, then that would only be delaying him. As his thoughts raced, Qin Yu put away the token and turned to look at a crooked tree behind him. Just now, it was a bit further away, and only a few thick branches had been twisted apart. The main body was still intact. If it weren't for the prompt from the token, even now, Qin Yu wouldn't have been able to sense anything. This concealment method was truly brilliant. Come out. Qin Yu's expression was calm. He looked straight at the place where the token was sensing. After several breaths of silence, the surface of the tree began to ripple like water. A cultivator stepped out. His face was deathly pale, and his eyes were filled with fear. He looked at Qin Yu and shivered. The words killed to silence the witness reverberated in his mind. This person wanted to run away, but after seeing the blue-robed cultivator die, he was sure that Qin Yu could kill him before he could even leave the martial field. In truth, Qin Yu did have this thought. But thinking about it, his current identity was simply borrowed. So what if others found out? Leave behind the token. The cultivator across from him was stunned for a moment before his face lit up with joy. He trembled and said, "Mister, please rest assured that I will not say a single word today." As he spoke, he took out the token and shouted that he would forfeit the competition. Spatial fluctuations descended and his figure distorted, vanishing from sight. Qin Yu picked up the token from the ground. As it crumbled to powder, a 10th dot of light appeared. The token trembled and its surface instantly changed. From the original pale white, it turned into a translucent jade color. At the same time, a massive number of lines automatically appeared, weaving together and covering the entire token. When all the lines appeared, the aura emitted by the token suddenly converged, condensing several feet around Qin Yu's body. It was like an invisible barrier that covered Qin Yu within. Within the barrier, all of his aura was isolated from the outside world. Qin Yu came to a conclusion. As long as he didn't jump out on his own initiative, he could just lie down somewhere. As long as his luck wasn't so bad that someone stepped on his face, he could safely wait until the end of the competition. Qin Yu smiled, a look of appreciation on his face. This Beast Trainer tournament really had some tricks up its sleeve. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, his feet suddenly stopped. His figure flickered, and he appeared at the place where he first killed that person. He had almost forgotten something. Looking around, he saw the gray fox. It was struggling with difficulty, trying to escape from here. But it was clear that opening its third eye had consumed too much of its strength, and it was in an extremely weak state. Even though Qin Yu had delayed it, it still hadn't been able to leave. At this time, as Qin Yu's eyes locked onto it, the gray fox smartly stopped. It looked up, a pleading look in its eyes. "Even if I let you leave, with your current condition, you will soon be killed by other monster beasts," Qin Yu lightly said. The gray fox's eyes brightened. It lifted a paw and pointed in front of it. It lay on the ground and kowtowed towards him, crying out several times. Qin Yu frowned. "Do you have some other reason that you must go?" The gray fox quickly nodded. Qin Yu looked at it, deep in thought. He couldn't determine whether what the gray fox said was true or false. As time passed, the gray fox gradually fell into despair. Large teardrops fell from its eyes. Qin Yu glanced at it and let out a breath. "All right, let me see where you want to go." By relying on the sensing ability of the token, Qin Yu easily avoided the final cultivators. Following the gray fox's guidance, he found a hidden cave. The cave entrance wasn't large, but as his flesh and bones began to explode, Qin Yu's body shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. He lowered his head and drilled in. Although the location was hidden, the air inside wasn't turbid. It was clear that there were other vents. The stone walls should have contained some sort of impurities that emitted a faint halo of light in the darkness. Although it wasn't bright, It was enough to clearly see what was happening inside. In a soft and dry pile of hay, there was a group of small, chubby, pink creatures that were weakly whimpering. Their eyes hadn't opened yet, so they didn't know that their mother wasn't here. In their hunger, they could only raise their heads and wiggle about as they searched. There was no need to say anything more. Feeling the gray fox's struggles, Chinyu let go. With a whoosh, it scuttled over and finally found its mother. It hurriedly stuck its head under its mother's belly. Smack, smack! There was a sucking sound in the cave. The gray fox licked this and that, occasionally looking up at Chinyu with gratitude in its eyes. Chapter 821. The final selection was over. Feeling the strength of the array formation descend upon him, Chinyu didn't resist. He glanced at the gray fox and its child that had just opened its eyes. In the next moment, he vanished in a spatial fluctuation. A tearing feeling spread through his body. This time, it lasted for a much shorter time than when he entered the arena. In just several breaths of time, the world around him brightened. Chinyu narrowed his eyes, adapting to the changes in light. He looked around. This place was no longer the island from before. From the transmission time, he was much closer to the arena. The participation jade token in his chest began to heat up. Chinyu took it out, and several messages appeared in his mind. The first was to congratulate him on becoming one of the 10 finalists and obtaining the qualifications to enter the mystic realm. The second was to inform him of the arrangements before entering the mystic realm. These people needed to wait here for 3 days before being allowed to enter. The third was to inform him of the list of 10 finalists and their ranking. As for the ranking, it was based on the strength of the person who obtained the token. Chinyu was ranked 6th. He didn't care about this. As long as he entered the list of 10, he could enter the Alliance Mystic Realm. That was enough. But soon, Chinyu's eyebrows rose up, surprise in his eyes. Dongfang Han wasn't on the list. In other words, he had been eliminated in the final selection arena. In truth, this was beyond Qin Yu's expectations. After all, the two of them had fought before, and Qin Yu was well aware of his strength. Even if he attacked with all his strength, he didn't have absolute confidence he could defeat Dongfang Han. But the final selection arena was filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Since he and Dongfang Han were present, it was possible that there were several other tyrannical geniuses present. If his luck was a bit worse or some accident occurred, causing him to be defeated, all of these were possible outcomes. So, Chinyu was only surprised for a moment before suppressing these thoughts. He continued to look. As expected, Luo, he was on the list. Moreover, just like the first and second selections, she was ranked first. She was truly worthy of being called a genius. Chinyu looked at this name several times before putting away the jade token. The Alliance cultivator, standing outside the range of the array formation, waited for Chinyu to read through the information before walking over. He cupped his hands together and bowed. Congratulations to Mr. Chinyu for entering the list of 10. To be able to enter the mystic realm is the dream of all Alliance cultivators. This person's smile was warm and amiable. It was clear that he was a sociable person. With just a few words, he not only complimented Chinyu, but also drew their relationship closer. Seeing Chinyu nod without saying anything, the man's smile didn't diminish. You just left the arena, so Mr. must be tired. The island has already prepared a room for you. If Mr. doesn't have any other arrangements, I will lead you to a room to rest. Chinyu said, I'll have to trouble you. He would only be staying on this island for 3 days before entering the Alliance's mystic realm to dig up graves and steal the ice soul jade bed. Once this matter was exposed, it was only natural that the Alliance would hunt him down. All right, even if everything went smoothly, his current identity was destined to not continue to be used. Thus, Chinyu didn't have any thoughts of using his current status to make friends with others for benefits. He entered the residence that the Alliance had arranged for him. His eyes calmly swept over the luxurious and exquisite decorations. He decided that for the next 3 days, he would use the excuse of healing his wounds to stay in his room. But the truth was that Qin Yu's tranquility was broken the next day. He pushed open the door and saw the Alliance cultivator that had welcomed him yesterday. Perhaps because he saw Qin Yu's complexion wasn't too good, this person swallowed his words and went straight to the point. Mr. Qin Yu, 3 of your friends have arrived outside the island. They say they have important matters to discuss with you. Friends? Qin Yu immediately thought of Dorlice, Yun Dai, and Old Lin. Did something happen? He suppressed his thoughts and nodded. Bring them in. Qin Yu said, but a moment later, the ones who appeared in front of him were actually them. Seeing the Shui family sisters and the red-clothed young girl, Qin Yu immediately understood that he was wrong. But what urgent matter could these 3 people have to see him for? Feeling the nervousness in Shui Yi and Shui Qingqing's eyes, and then looking at Su Hongyi's clearly red eyes, Qin Yu didn't reveal his inner thoughts. He said to the Alliance cultivator, I'll have to trouble you. The Alliance cultivator smiled and waved his hand, bidding his farewells, and then leaving. The final selection smoothly ended. He could clearly feel that the atmosphere within the Alliance had become much more relaxed. Otherwise, if the atmosphere was as serious as before, he definitely wouldn't have dared to bring these 3 women to the island. Of course, there was another important reason. The ones who came to see Qin Yu today were 3 young and beautiful women. Moreover, one of them was clearly emotional, and her eyes were red from crying. Who knew what their relationship was and what had happened between them? If he tried to stop them and delayed something, Qin Yu would definitely look into his responsibilities afterwards. The final list of 10 people, those that could reach this step, whether or not they joined the Alliance, were destined to become characters that could shake the world in the future. If he could avoid offending them, then it was best not to. He brought the 3 women into a room and closed the door. Qin Yu frowned. Why are you here? Without waiting for the Shui family sisters to speak, Su Hongyi said in a hoarse voice, I was the one who asked them to bring me here. Mr. Qin Yu, please don't blame them. Qin Yu glanced at her, not speaking. He thought that they weren't familiar with each other, and strictly speaking, there were even some grudges between them. Moreover, why were you looking for me? Su Hongyi looked at Qin Yu. Big brother Dongfang died. With just these words, large beads of tears began to roll down her red eyes. Qin Yu was stunned for a moment before he responded. The person she was speaking of was Dongfang Han. His first thought was that this was impossible. With Dongfang Han's strength, it was possible that he had been accidentally eliminated, but to be killed by someone else was simply a joke. As long as he used his trump card, Qin Yu believed that no one in the final selection arena could stop him from leaving. If there was, then the entire final selection arena could sense it, so there was no reason he wouldn't know. But looking at Su Hongyi's silent tears and her sorrowful appearance, this matter didn't seem fake. Qin Yu turned to look at the Shui family sisters. The 2 of them nodded at him, and his heart sank. Dongfang Han really had died. He couldn't say what he was feeling. Strictly speaking, the 2 of them only truly knew each other before they fought. There was no friendship between them at all. But at the end of their fight, the 2 of them were able to guess each other's thoughts with just a single glance. This left a deep impression on Qin Yu. It might be a bit pretentious to say that they appreciated each other's talents, but Qin Yu couldn't deny that he had a very good impression of Dongfang Han, who looked cold and aloof on the outside, and was like a madman when he fought. Qin Yu's expression changed, causing Su Hongyi to feel anticipation rise in her heart. After a moment of silence, he slowly said, If something like this happened, then Miss Su should have gone to notify the Dongfang family. Why did you come looking for me? Su Hongyi stared at him. It's useless to look for them. I know that only you can help me take revenge for Brother Dongfang. Qin Yu frowned. He had a good impression of Dongfang Han, but it wasn't to the point of wanting to take revenge for him. Moreover, in the final selection arena, everyone would be competing with each other. If they were not careful, they might even lose their lives. There was no reason for him to intervene in such a matter. Qin Yu shook his head without hesitation. I'm sorry, Miss Su. I know that you are very sad right now, but I need to prepare to enter the mystic realm. If there is nothing else, please leave. Wait! Su Hongyi screamed. Big brother Dongfang was killed by Luo He. Luo River. As this name entered his ears, Qin Yu frowned. He had an impression that East Fong Han had a very good relationship with this person. Why would he kill Dong Fong Han? Was there some other secret behind this? Glancing at Su Hongyi, Qin Yu said in a low voice, "Do you have evidence?" Su Hongyi sadly shook her head. "I don't, but I can confirm that the one who killed Big Brother Dongfang was Luo He." Qin Yu remained expressionless. If he couldn't bring out any evidence, then he couldn't just believe whatever she said. Su Hongyi clenched her teeth. She suddenly lifted a hand and pointed between her eyebrows. Her black pupils suddenly enlarged until they occupied over 2/3 of her eyes, leaving only a few whites at the corners. She looked at Qin Yu and paused for a moment. Then she said, "Not too long ago, you killed someone in the final selection arena. It was a man." Qin Yu's eyes turned cold. Su Hongyi hurriedly said, "I don't have any other meaning. I just want to tell you that I was born with a special ability that allows me to see the blood of cultivators. For familiar people, I can even smell the scent of their blood." After leaving the final selection arena, Luo he brought back Big Brother Dongfang Han's corpse. Although he disguised it well, saying that an accident occurred when he was dealing with a powerful monster beast, I am sure that I didn't see wrong. His body was stained with Big Brother Dongfang's blood. Qin Yu remained silent. He was considering whether Su Hongyi was telling the truth or not. Although her eyes were strange and she had accurately judged what had happened to his body, he had no choice but to be cautious. The reason for this was all because of Luo He. From the start, he felt an inexplicable hostility towards this person. And now, Dongfang Han's death was linked to him. Who knew whether or not this was a trap deliberately aimed at him? Towards the unknown, Qin Yu never dared to be the least bit careless. In this world, those who were careless wouldn't live for long. Seeing Qin Yu remain silent, Su Hongyi revealed another inside story. Big Brother Dongfang died in my arms. He personally told me that the one who killed him was Luo He. He told me not to reveal anything strange, otherwise I would be silenced. I swear that not a single word I said was false. Otherwise I will die a horrible death. Qin Yu said in a low voice, "Why didn't you say anything just now?" Su Hongyi's voice was hoarse. "Before Big Brother Dongfang died, he forced me to vow that I would never take revenge on Luo He, and he also told me not to look for you. He seemed to be well aware of your strength. Moreover, I could see that you were already hostile towards Luo He." She looked up. "Mr. Qin Yu, I don't know why you're dissatisfied with Luo He, but he is our common enemy. Right now, only you can help Big Brother Dongfang take revenge. As long as you agree to help, I will give this to you." She took out a jade pendant from her chest. It was shaped like a large fish, and its surface was carved with scales. Although it wasn't clear, it gave off a lively feeling. This comes from the Beast Trainer Alliance's mystic realm, and is inextricably linked to it. And Big Brother Dongfang also has a similar jade pendant. As long as one can gather both pieces, they will have a chance to obtain a massive good fortune in the mystic realm. However, Big Brother Dongfang's piece has already been lost. I dare to conclude that it is on Luo He. Mr. Qin Yu, this is the greatest sincerity and reward I can give you. I ask that you help me. Help the deceased Big Brother Dongfang. Qin Yu was silent for a moment. "Why is this jade pendant on you?" Su Hongyi silently wept once more. "A month ago, I was engaged to Big Brother Dongfang. This jade pendant was the Dongfang family's betrothal gift." Looking at Su Hongyi, who exuded a deep sorrow from within, Qin Yu was silent for an even longer time. He looked at the jade pendant in her hand and slowly said, "I can promise you that if there is a chance, I will help. But I cannot guarantee anything." The reason he agreed to help was because of his favorable impression of Dongfang Han, because of his inexplicable hostility towards Luo He, and also because of Su Hongyi's heartfelt sorrow. But Qin Yu had to admit that the most fundamental reason was the jade pendant that Su Hongyi took out. Although he didn't know what this jade pendant was, the moment he saw it, the ancient's heart that had fused with Qin Yu's chest began to beat faster. Qin Yu's intuition told him that Su Hongyi wasn't lying. This jade pendant was a treasure, and it was likely to be related to the lucky chances in the mystic realm. Moreover, What was even more mysterious was that Qin Yu felt that this lucky chance should have been his to begin with. Su Hongyi didn't hesitate. She offered the jade pendant with both hands. I agree. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. When the token began to heat up once more, a message was transmitted. It was time to enter the mystic realm. When Qin Yu pushed open the door, the Alliance cultivator who had welcomed him was already waiting outside. He respectfully said, "Mr. Qin Yu, please follow me." He hurriedly walked to the center of the island and arrived outside a strange temple. The reason it was strange was because the material used to construct this temple was extremely rare. It was a crystallized form similar to ice, and cold energy rose up from it. But what was strange was that after approaching it, not only did he not feel the slightest chill, but the air seemed to heat up as if it would burn. Around the temple, there were many black armored guards that only revealed their eyes. A sharp light surged from their eyes, sharp and fierce. The Alliance cultivator stopped. "Mr. Qin Yu, this is as far as I can bring you." After he finished speaking, he bowed. "I wish Mr. Qin Yu good luck in entering the mystic realm." He turned and left. Qin Yu paused for a moment. Then, he stepped into the temple. With the intensity of his mortal body, he naturally didn't fear the high temperatures in the air. The black armored guards outside the temple seemed to know who he was. No matter how Qin Yu approached the temple, they didn't respond at all. As soon as he stepped into the temple, the temperature in the air began to rapidly fall. It was as if he had crossed over the scorching heat in midwinter. Faint traces of cold energy constantly drilled into his body like needles. Qin Yu frowned. The ancient heart in his chest beat, shaking apart all the cold energy that invaded his body. Shwa, shwa. Several eyes gathered on Qin Yu. As they saw that he hadn't stopped in the slightest and was able to resist the invasion of the cold energy, a dignified look appeared in their eyes. "Master," they had all experienced the drastic changes in temperature both inside and outside the temple, so they naturally knew the mysteries behind it. To them, scorching heat and freezing cold weren't anything at all. But when the two changed, it was extremely difficult to contend with. To be able to resolve the temperature change without batting an eyelid, this alone was enough to cause everyone to look at Qin Yu in a higher light. Of course, after the final selection, news of Qin Yu and Dongfang Han's evenly matched battle had already spread out. No one dared to underestimate him, and now they only paid a little more attention to him. Qin Yu thought of this. Since he couldn't keep a low profile, he might as well display a bit more strength to avoid anyone trying to find trouble with him. It was because of this that the moment he entered the temple and saw the people inside, he displayed such a performance just now. An Alliance cultivator walked up and said in a low voice, "Mr. Qin Yu, please wait a moment." Qin Yu nodded. He walked into the temple and stood still. As the sound of footsteps echoed out from the temple entrance once more, the gazes that were focused on Qin Yu quickly dispersed, and they continued to observe the strength of those that came later. Luo, he was the last to arrive. Qin Yu didn't glance at her, and she also didn't look at him. But both of them felt as if they were being watched by the other. The 10 people on the list had gathered. From within the temple, 4 Alliance elders walked out, all of them with solemn expressions. The one in the lead said in a low voice, "After entering the mystic realm, everyone must follow us. Without permission, you're not allowed to leave without permission, otherwise you will have to bear the consequences." Without further delay, with a loud explosion, the entire temple violently trembled. Runes began to rapidly appear on the translucent surface of the temple. Rumble, rumble. Above the island, winds and clouds began to swirl. Massive black clouds appeared out of thin air, and the world suddenly darkened. At this time, a beam of light pierced through the black clouds and fell upon the temple. As if a formidable strength had been poured into it, all of the runes that appeared within the temple came to life. Hum hum. Chapter 822. Far away from the Starfall Archipelago, even further south was the deep sea. Without the suppression of the Alliance array formation, the sea region became even more mysterious and terrifying. Raging waves soared into the skies. From time to time, one could see astonishingly large beasts rising from the seabed, breaking through the surface and roaring into the heavens. But in the depths of this terrifying sea region, there was a place that was incomparably calm. All of the turbulent undercurrents that approached would be directly erased. It was as if there was an invisible divine might shrouding this place, awe-inspiring and inviolable, breaking through the icy, cold seawater and continuing downwards. It was like passing through a black curtain. Light was released from the seabed, illuminating everything. A stone altar stood atop the fine black sand of the seabed. It was extremely large, like the base of a city. One couldn't see the end of it. The reason it was described this way was because the altar was crudely constructed. It looked as if stones had been randomly moved here and piled up on top of each other. There were some strange runes on the surface of these stones, but far too much time had passed. Even with the protection of the altar, after being soaked in the endless seawater, these runes had long since become blurry and indistinct. One could only clearly feel the thick aura of time that these stones emitted, so thick that it nearly condensed into essence. But this aura didn't have the slightest smell of decay or decay. Rather, it was filled with a faint vitality. It was as if in the next moment, these heavily worn stones would grow green shoots that would bloom and bear fruit. And the light coming from the seabed came from the altar. Or, to be more precise, it came from these seemingly ordinary stones. Beneath the illumination of the light, one could clearly see that around the deep-sea altar, there were countless sea monster beasts quietly crawling about. They came from different races and had different appearances and eating habits. A considerable portion of them were even recognized as natural enemies. As long as they met in the sea, there was no need for any reason and a fierce battle would immediately break out. But now, these sea monster beasts were all quietly lying in place, their tails facing backwards and their heads facing the altar. Most of their horrifying and ferocious faces actually revealed a hint of piety. Perhaps the only similarity between these demonic beasts was that their bodies were all very large. The smaller ones were hundreds of feet long, and the larger ones were more than 10,000 feet long, or even more astonishing. The simplest way to measure the strength of the sea monster beasts was their body size. Even if it wasn't 100% accurate, it was at least 90% accurate. If someone were to come here and see this scene, they would probably be confused and their eyeballs would pop out. Suddenly, a large amount of light gathered on the ancient and huge stone altar. They condensed on top of the altar and formed the outline of a huge eye. The stone altar was as large as the base of a city, but this eye took up almost 90% of its area. It was hard to imagine just how terrifying the body of the existence that possessed this eye was. The eyes condensed from light appeared. The monster beasts around the altar roared in unison and lowered their heads to the ground. The huge eyeball turned slightly, and then it looked past the monsters. Its gaze seemed to penetrate the barrier of the cold seawater, falling into the endless distance. Suddenly, a roar sounded from the bottom of the sea. With the altar as the center, the calm, deep sea went berserk without warning. The quiet seawater turned into violent beasts. They roared and spun wildly, forming a terrifying whirlpool at the bottom of the sea. Its volume rapidly expanded, sucking in more and more seawater, causing the whirlpool's energy to increase at an astonishing rate. Chinyu swore that this was the worst transmission experience he had ever experienced in his life. If it weren't for the fact that his mortal body was powerful enough, it wouldn't have been as simple as his complexion turning pale. He would have vomited blood on the spot. His ears were filled with stifled coughs and great gasps for breath. The 4 Alliance elders were fine, but the other cultivators that were transmitted together were in a worse situation than Chinyu. One of them, a female cultivator in a plain white dress, had already begun to vomit. A pungent smell rose up, causing several people that were forcefully suppressing themselves to retch. The scene could be called spectacular. After all, It was extremely rare for a top beast trainer with a distinguished status to end up in such a distressed state. The four Alliance elders maintained their composure. They carefully observed everyone's reactions, and when they didn't discover anything wrong, they finally relaxed. In the final selection field, the top 100 participants entered the arena. In the end, only 87 people managed to leave alive, and 13 people would remain here forever. These 13 people's lives would undoubtedly bring new troubles to the Alliance that had just calmed down. But they still did this. Their goal was to confirm whether or not there was a spy sent by the sea on the final selection list. Before entering the mystic realm, when they stepped into the transmission hall, the temperature changed from hot to cold, as well as the fierce jolts of the transmission. All of this was to supplement and confirm the results of the screening. Once a participating cultivator revealed any problems, the four elders would immediately subdue them. Luckily, there weren't any problems. After waiting for a while for everyone to recover, one of the Alliance elders said, "The existence of the mystic realm is the foundation of the Alliance." The jolt you experienced just now is a way to confirm it, to prevent people with bad intentions from sneaking in. If someone could enter the list of 10, then in terms of pure beast trainer ability, they weren't necessarily weaker than them. Moreover, Luo He, Qin Yu, and the others were all young. They were sure to have great achievements in the future. If they gave an appropriate explanation, they could avoid any dissatisfaction in their hearts. Why wouldn't they do something that didn't cost them anything? Another elder smiled. "All right, if you've rested enough, then we should set off. Take a good look along the way. Perhaps there will be some harvests for you." The third elder had a grim expression. "You can look and you can remember, but there is one thing you must remember. Whatever you see in the mystic realm cannot be revealed. Otherwise, once the Alliance learns of it, you will be severely punished." After stepping out of the hall, Qin Yu discovered that it looked exactly the same as the one he had seen before. Even the materials used were similar. The only difference was that the crystal used to construct this hall was a faint red color. The surface seemed to be covered in flames, and the air was cold. But soon, Qin Yu couldn't care about this anymore. This was because not too far away from the hall, he saw a strange tree. The reason he said it was strange was because this tree's trunk and branches had long since withered away. One could even see the cracked bark underneath. The bare branches were like the claws of skeletons and monsters. They pointed straight towards the sky, and what was unbelievable was that these branches were actually covered with flowers. That's right. Qin, you could confirm that these flowers grew from these withered branches. When the wind blew past, he could even smell a faint fragrance. It wasn't just Qin Yu who saw this strange tree. Everyone's eyes widened, their faces filled with disbelief. The elder who had reminded everyone to take a good look faintly smiled. Don't be surprised. The truly unbelievable things have yet to come. Thus, along the way, Qin Yu witnessed countless existences that completely subverted everything he knew. For instance, a burning river. It coiled above the earth like a giant fire dragon. The blazing flames emitted a scorching heat that twisted the air. But in this river, there were countless fish happily swimming about as if they couldn't feel that it was burning. For instance, an active volcano that spewed out black smoke and a massive amount of dust. With a loud bang, it erupted. But what the volcano spewed out wasn't magma, but massive chunks of ice. These chunks of ice smashed into the ground, emitting an icy chill that caused a white frost to rapidly spread outwards with the falling ice as the center. For instance, a giant bird that flew through the skies. It had gorgeous feathers that reflected the sunlight with a rainbow-hued halo, as if it were carved from crystal. But when it lowered its head and looked at the group of cultivators walking on the ground, it revealed two empty eye sockets. One could clearly see the white bones within. Qin Yu even saw with his own eyes a giant meteor fall from the skies, dragging a long tail behind it. This meteor was massive. Even from a great distance, one could clearly feel the terrifying strength it carried. Qin Yu didn't doubt that as long as this meteor fell, it would be enough to turn the peaceful plain in front of him into a living hell. But he discovered that the four Alliance elders only glanced at it for a moment before looking away and continuing on their way. And beneath the meteor, the mountain goat and blue ox that were moving about on the plain didn't move at all. They maintained a lazy state of eating. The meteor fell to the ground. Qin subconsciously narrowed his eyes. But the heaven-shaking explosion that he expected, as well as the world-destroying might, didn't erupt. It was like what he saw just now was only an illusion. But Qin was certain that he hadn't seen wrong. That meteor that fell from the skies just now was absolutely real. Moreover, he noticed that everyone else around him had the same reaction as him. If it was an illusion, it was impossible for everyone to react the same way. As Qin furrowed his eyebrows in contemplation, there was another loud explosion in the skies above. Then, the meteor that had fallen to the ground just now appeared in his line of sight once more. It followed the exact same trajectory as before and smashed into the ground. The so-called Alliance mystic realm was filled with inconceivable possibilities. It was simply a place that caused one's heart to topple. Qin had an intuition that this mystic realm was hiding some incomparably astonishing secret. And now, the place that the four Alliance elders were leading them to was likely related to this secret. At this moment, Qin had unknowingly chosen to forget his primary goal for entering this mystic realm. His entire mind was focused on this secret. He wanted to approach it and understand it. Chapter 823. The Jade Pendant Pierced the Heavens. When one truly stood in front of it, all words paled in comparison. They could only stare with wide eyes, staring at the miraculous scene in front of them, their minds blanking out. It was like a waterfall falling from the highest heavens, rushing down to the earth. But in the next moment, it was frozen solid by a great strength, erasing all the shaking. The surface of the jade pendant was as smooth as a mirror, warm and transparent. The jade pendant shined with a faint halo of light. One couldn't see where it ended, and one couldn't see where it began. The four Alliance elders, whether they were gentle or cold, all had solemn and respectful expressions. There was no need to remind them. The cultivators on the list of 10, including Qin, felt endless or rise up in their hearts. It was like this jade pendant was a god. Just standing in front of it made one feel a sense of blasphemy, making one feel apprehensive and panic-stricken. Everyone, I ask you to step in front of the jade pendant according to your ranking. Tell us what you feel truthfully. I apologize, but the Alliance cannot tell you what this jade pendant is for now. But please believe that this will be the greatest lucky chance you will encounter in your lives. So, everyone, please do your best and do not hold anything back. I guarantee that if you hide anything, you will regret it in the future. First, Luohi. The four Alliance elders spread out, their expressions dignified. Luohi took a deep breath and walked towards the jade pendant. After several steps, he stopped. He didn't know what was happening, but he simply closed his eyes. Silence reigned. The four Alliance elders' eyes fell tightly on him. Although at this moment, Qin mind was completely focused on the jade pendant in front of him, he could still feel a trace of vigilance from them. That's right, vigilance. It was as if they were worried that he would suddenly attack and harm the jade pendant. But at this time, Qin ability to think was suppressed by his instincts. He didn't think about what was happening. He tossed aside his thoughts and looked at the sky-piercing jade pendant in front of him, as if it contained everything he wanted. After a moment, he opened his eyes. He stared at the sky-piercing jade pendant in front of him, a bit of hesitation flashing on his face. Then, he stepped forwards once more. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, he suddenly stopped. He seemed to be forcefully suppressing something, but in the end he couldn't. His complexion paled. He turned and spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body was wrapped in a strength and sent flying backwards. Puff! After landing on the ground, she spat out another mouthful of blood. He looked at Yubai, her eyes filled with shock. An undetectable disappointment appeared in the eyes of the four Alliance elders, but they immediately calmed down. One of them walked to Luohi's side and helped him suppress his injuries. Then, in a low voice, he asked Luohi about his harvest from the jade disc. At this moment, the second person on the list of 10 started to walk towards the jade disc. Qin suddenly felt a bit of regret. He shouldn't have hidden his strength and only obtained 6th place. Otherwise, he would already be standing in front of the jade disc. Although he knew very well that it was just a matter of time before he could get close to the jade annulus, he still couldn't help but regret it. This emotion was extremely strong, so strong that it almost destroyed his rationality. With Qin Yu's thoughts and shrewdness, this was certainly abnormal. But this time, he couldn't sense it at all. It was as if when this jade appeared in front of him, all reason and thinking would be completely destroyed, and his entire mind would be occupied. The second person on the name list was sent back while coughing up blood. He was in an even worse state than Luohi. He didn't even have the chance to continue forward before he was injured by a formless energy. Then came the third and the fourth. Qin Yu sucked in great gulps of air, barely able to suppress the impatience in his heart. This period of time clearly hadn't been long, but in his eyes, it had become incomparably long. Finally, the fifth person failed. Yes, he failed. Although he didn't know what he would experience after approaching the jade disc, he was sent back while coughing up blood. In addition to the expressions of the 4 Alliance elders, it was clear that he hadn't reached his goal. Now it was Qin Yu's turn. Without waiting for the Alliance elders to signal him, he strode forwards. If it weren't for his instincts telling him not to approach too quickly, he feared he would have flown over. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 7 steps, 8 steps, 9 steps, 13 steps, 14 steps, 15 steps. The originally expressionless Alliance elders who had been disappointed with the results of this competition suddenly brightened up. An unexpected dark horse. Was he hiding his strength? Or did he have a tolerance that surpassed ordinary people when facing the jade disc? But this wasn't important. What was important was that there might be a chance. Even if this chance was extremely slim, so slim that the Alliance had spent tens of thousands of years and still hadn't grasped it. But as long as it existed, they would continue to persist and never give up. The 16th step. Qin Yu felt that he had reached his limit. At this time, the surrounding air was like a viscous swamp, desperately wrapping around him as if it wanted to grind him into powder. It was like an open maw filled with fangs, able to tear him apart with just a gentle closing. Within his chest, 2 hearts wildly beat. As he felt a burning sensation in his lungs, Qin Yu determined that he couldn't continue forwards any further. He let out a heavy breath and looked at the jade disc in front of him with a bit of unwillingness. He was already very close to it, only a few steps away. But these few steps were an insurmountable gap. A loud sound arrived without warning, rumbling into his mind and reaching deep into his soul. Qin Yu closed his eyes. He could feel his consciousness being drawn out of his body and arriving in a strange and dazzling world. Starfall Archipelago, Beast Trainer Alliance Headquarters. President Beach Douglas opened his eyes. His expression was calm, and he naturally exuded the calmness that a leader should have. However, the 3 vice presidents who had known each other for many years could still sense the seriousness hidden under his calm face in an instant. Sir President, that restless feeling hasn't disappeared yet? A vice president asked in a low voice. Douglas slowly nodded. Yes, not only has it not disappeared, but it has become even more intense. He paused for a moment and swept his eyes over the 3 people. Everyone, my intuition tells me that a great change is about to arrive in the Alliance. The 3 vice presidents felt their hearts turn cold. Because of his alien bloodline, President Douglas possessed an intuition that far surpassed the imagination of the common man. And over the endless years, this intuition had mostly come true. Another vice president had an ugly complexion. Could it be that the great sea beast attacking the ship is really going to take action? We have already conducted the most stringent screening. For this, we didn't even hesitate to pay the lives of 13 outstanding beast trainers. Moreover, During the transmission, there were 2 other auxiliary tests, and there were no problems at all. Could it be that we haven't done enough? The final 10 people have already entered the mystic realm. With 4 Alliance elders nearby, any abnormality will be immediately detected. Even if that sea beast wants to make a big move, I fear it won't have the chance. After all, the mystic realm is completely different from the world we live in. Biggie Douglas remained silent. He was well aware of what the 3 vice presidents were saying, but he still couldn't erase the haze in his heart. However, there was one thing that was correct. The rules of the mystic realm were different from those of the main world. Unless one reached an existence that truly transcended the rules, it was impossible to send their strength into the mystic realm. He hoped that nothing would happen. In fact, as the 4 vice presidents of the Alliance were worrying, another strength had crossed through the endless space and time to arrive. What one to do was break into the mystic realm. The source of this strength came from the little blue lamp. When Yu stepped into the Alliance mystic realm, the little blue lamp had already sensed him through their connection. It was shocked beyond belief. At the level of the little blue lamp, it hadn't been so shocked even when Yu touched upon the path of time. It was really, even in the eyes of the little blue lamp, this fortuitous encounter was filled with fantastical colors and inconceivable colors. When Yu arrived in front of the jade disc, there was no longer any suspense. Although he couldn't figure out what was going on, the facts were right in front of him. He didn't have time to think about why this thing was here. After determining the identity of the jade disc, the little blue lamp only had one thought: obtain it. It had to help Yu obtain it. Even if it was discovered by the heavenly Tao, it wouldn't hesitate. Thus, the little blue lamp attacked without reservation. It wasn't just because it was determined to obtain it, but also because the rules of the world it existed in had already changed. If it tried to forcefully break in without permission, the consumption would be shockingly high. It had to go all out. In front of the sky-piercing jade disc, as the 4 Alliance elders looked at Yu, who had his eyes closed, their eyes became increasingly bright. This was because they discovered that not only was Yu closer to the jade disc, but the time he persisted had far surpassed Luo He. In fact, it wasn't much different from the best results recorded in the past. Although this didn't mean that they would definitely obtain a harvest, at the very least the chances were much higher. Suddenly, in the skies above the jade disc, there was a loud explosion. This wasn't the roar of thunder, but more like a towering mountain crashing to the ground. Then, the skies shattered and a beam of starlight fell down. It condensed into a beam of light that covered Yu. Motes of starlight floated up and down, spinning like a rainbow galaxy. They emitted an endless and mysterious aura, making Yu seem like an immortal descending to the world. His robes fluttered in the wind. Then, he floated up from the ground, rising 1,000 feet into the air. Hum! Hum! A faint tremor spread out from the ground. Everyone's eyes widened, their faces filled with shock. This was because they could clearly feel that the source of this tremor was the sky-piercing jade disc in front of them. It was like there was some sort of resonance between it and the starlight that fell from the skies. The 4 Alliance elders flushed red with excitement. They swore that in the annals of history, this was a scene that had never appeared before. This was the first time that the jade disc had responded to an outside exploration. Perhaps the person that the entire Alliance had been waiting for had finally appeared today. Luo He paled. She stared at Yu's back. After a brief moment of shock and disbelief, she revealed a deep hatred. Yu, it's you again. Why is it that every time you ruin my plans? Moreover, why is this damn jade disc resonating with you? Her eyes darkened for a long time before finally turning cold. I will not allow you to succeed in front of me. This time, it is my turn to destroy your good fortune so that you will regret it for the rest of your life. Luo He lowered her head. At this moment, because of the changes in the jade disc, no one noticed that the shadow beneath her feet had changed. Like a drop of ink falling into clear water, a black shadow constantly spread outwards. They had failed. Yu and the little blue lamp's consciousness fell into silence. Their hearts were filled with unwillingness, but there was nothing they could do. This was its choice, and in this world, no one could force it to do anything it didn't want to do. The starlight that fell from the skies was its compensation to Chinyu. It could be considered a consolation reward for being rejected. But even if it was only a consolation reward, Chinyu was still shaken as he felt the strength constantly flowing into his body from the starlight. He couldn't help but think, if he could truly obtain its approval with the little blue lamp's help, just what sort of harvest would there be? He feared that it would be an astonishing amount of wealth, one that was simply unimaginable. Perhaps he should try again. What if he succeeded? Just as this thought rose, it was suppressed by the little blue lamp's words. Don't waste your energy. Since it has rejected you, it won't give you a second chance. After enduring and enduring, the little blue lamp let out a heavy sigh. He had no idea what sort of heaven-defying luck he had stumbled upon to arrive in front of it. But in the end, he could only give up. How could he be willing? But even if he was unwilling, there was nothing he could do. If he exchanged for a stroke of good fortune, the little blue lamp might be able to think of some other method. But facing it, it was best not to use any methods, otherwise the one to regret it in the end would be himself. Of this, the little blue lamp firmly believed. Chinyu clenched his teeth. Is there really no chance? Perhaps you can tell me the origin of this jade disc, and we can think of a way together. The little blue lamp said, if you have the qualifications to know about it, then you will naturally know. If you don't have the qualifications, then even if I say it, you won't be able to hear it. Give up. You are not fated with it. It will continue to stay here, waiting for the person it is waiting for. Chinyu's complexion paled, but he believed in the little blue lamp. Since it said this, it was best not to be greedy. At this time, there was a loud explosion. Immersed in the world of consciousness, Chinyu didn't know what was happening. But he could clearly feel that the formidable strength from the starlight was rapidly weakening until it disappeared from sight. The little blue lamp's consciousness projection suddenly had a strange expression. It deeply looked at Chinyu and said, "There's a change in the outside world. You must leave immediately. The gift of the stars has been interrupted. For you, it is hard to say whether this is a good or bad thing." Chinyu's eyes brightened. What is the meaning of this? Tell me. The little blue lamp said, the consolation prize was destroyed by someone. In a strict sense, you haven't been completely rejected. That's right, it is just as you thought. Perhaps after this, you will have another chance to try. But for now, you had best leave this place, otherwise I fear there will be some trouble. In front of the jade disc, the shadows that spread out on the ground began to wildly spin, as if they were the projection of a giant vortex. Then, with a loud roar, countless phantoms of giant beasts drilled out. Their bodies were thousands of feet long, some even tens of thousands of feet, and they crazily rushed towards the jade disc. Chapter 8:24. Chinyu opened his eyes. Before he could fully control his body, his mortal body's powerful instincts had already begun to respond in the face of danger. Chinyu stepped forwards. His body howled like a rock as he avoided the jaws of a giant beast phantom. As for what happened next, he didn't need to worry about it. The four Alliance elders rushed in front of him at nearly the same time. Without hesitation, they moved in front of Chinyu to protect him. Hurry and leave. The entire Alliance had waited for 100,000 years. Finally, a person that could cause the jade disc to respond had arrived. It wouldn't allow any harm to come to him. Bang, bang. The four Alliance elders unleashed their full cultivation. Boundless auras burst out of their bodies and intertwined with each other. It was like a giant millstone, rumbling as it rotated, blocking all of the giant beast phantoms outside. Chinyu's thoughts stirred as he guessed the reason. He certainly wouldn't explain too much. Taking advantage of the time, the four Alliance elders attacked. He landed on the ground and left the range of the battlefield. Raising his head and looking forward, as if sensing the threat from the outside world, a faint layer of light appeared on the surface of the mirror-like supreme jade wall. It was thin and light, like the vast, clear, starry sky, with the light of billions of stars sprinkling down. Roar! Another roar sounded out from the shadow vortex on the ground. Qin Yu's heart shrank, as if someone had ruthlessly stabbed him between his eyebrows. He turned his head to see a giant shadow tentacle drill out from the vortex, ruthlessly lashing out like a whip. Rumble, rumble. Wherever it passed, the air emitted hoarse roars. Several giant beast phantoms weren't able to dodge in time and were directly smashed to pieces, tumbling around and vanishing from sight. The four Alliance elders clearly knew just how fierce this attack was. Their complexions changed, and they hurriedly retreated. The shadow tentacle crashed into the jade disk like a bolt of lightning. There was a heaven-shaking explosion as a terrifying shockwave swept out. Qin Yu never imagined that he would be affected, even though he had already escaped the range of the battlefield. He cursed inwardly. He only had enough time to raise his arms in front of him, but in the next moment he was sent flying away as if he had been struck by a giant hammer. He tumbled to the ground several times and continued to draw backwards. He shook his sore and aching arms, his heart shaking. After fusing with the ancient's heart, his mortal body had constantly transformed and strengthened. He had also obtained the gift of starlight, allowing his mortal body to rapidly strengthen for a short period of time. Even so, he was only barely able to resist the onslaught. If the impact had been a little stronger, or if he had been a little closer, his bones would have been broken and his head would have been bleeding. Painful groans could be heard all around. Not long ago, the 10 cultivators who had entered the mystic realm were filled with anticipation and excitement. But now most of them were lying on the ground, curled up and moaning in a low voice. Qin Yu frowned. He couldn't find Luo He anywhere. Where did she go? Of course, Qin Yu didn't think that he had already been killed by the phantom beast that had escaped from the shadow vortex. Perhaps, even if most of the people here died, nothing would happen to him. In fact, Qin Yu couldn't help but suspect that the sudden appearance of the shadow vortex had something to do with the Luo River. At this time, another roar came from the shadow vortex. Qin Yu's pupils violently shrank. As he saw 7 or 8 tentacles drill out, there was only one thought in his mind. He absolutely could not stay here any longer. What nonsense! Just a single tentacle had nearly crippled his arms in the aftermath of the collision with the jade pendant, and now there were so many of them. If he continued to stay here, wouldn't he just be ruthlessly rubbed against the ground? Without hesitation, Qin Yu turned and quickly left. He was indeed thinking about obtaining the jade pendant's approval once more. But no matter how great the benefits were, he still had to ensure that he was alive. If he died, everything would be for naught. In any case, the jade pendant was here. He might as well wait until the battle was over before coming back. As for whether or not the jade pendant would be destroyed by the tentacles that drilled out of the shadow vortex, Qin Yu wasn't worried at all. If the little blue lamp was so excited that it didn't even hesitate to expose itself to help him obtain something, how could it be so easily destroyed? Even if there was something hidden in the shadow vortex, since the little blue lamp didn't say anything, there was nothing to worry about. You're right. The jade pendant won't be destroyed. Even if the entire world was destroyed, it would still be safe and sound. The little blue lamp's consciousness fluctuated. However, the existence that created the shadow vortex isn't ordinary. If it weren't for the fact that this space is a bit strange, it would be able to erupt with a strength 10 times greater than it is now. As Qin Yu rapidly left the battlefield, he asked, "You can't tell me the origin of the jade pendant, but can you at least tell me what the shadow vortex is?" The little blue lamp was silent for a moment, as if it felt that it should tell Qin Yu some things so that he was mentally prepared. After all, he still had a chance to obtain its approval. Although the chances weren't too high. What if he succeeded? After several breaths of time, the little blue lamp slowly said, "You should have already discovered that there is something strange about this space. The reason is like this is because this space itself shouldn't have existed. This isn't too accurate. To be more accurate, after it was formed, it should have immediately collapsed." Qin Yu's eyes brightened. "You mean to say that the reason this space can continue to exist is because of the heaven-reaching jade pendant?" "That's right. The little blue lamp lightly said, "It suppressed the collapse of this space and reshaped its rules and order." In a sense, you can think of this space as an independent small world. However, there is something you need to understand. This space that should have collapsed has evolved into a stable small world. This doesn't just mean that the jade pendant has suppressed this place. It also means that it has suppressed the will of the main world itself. Qin Yu's eyes widened. The little blue lamp continued to say, "That's right. You should have already guessed that the existence of the jade pendant is suppressing the source will of a world." Qin Yu sucked in a breath of cold air. Although he had guessed that the jade pendant was extraordinary from the little blue lamp's reaction as well as the gift of the stars, it was only now that he drew an approximate outline of it in his heart. Although he still didn't know what the origin of the jade pendant was and how miraculous it was already grand and powerful enough. Suppressing the source will of a world, Qin, you didn't know what level of strength was required to accomplish this, but it far surpassed the limits of his understanding. What should have been destroyed wasn't destroyed. Rather, it continued to exist for a long time. The world source was suppressed, so it couldn't directly destroy this place. But its instincts urged it to adapt to other methods. Thus, under the guidance of the world's will, an existence that created the shadow vortex was born. In simpler terms, you can think of the thing hidden in the vortex as the incarnation of the world's source. Qin Yu remained silent. No wonder the shockwaves from that collision just now were so terrifying. It turned out that the two sides that fought were masters that he didn't even dare to imagine. But just as this thought appeared, the little blue lamp poured a bucket of cold water over it. It quietly said, "In that collision just now, whether it was the shadow vortex or the jade pendant, neither of them were able to erupt with even 1% of their strength. Otherwise, you would have already been crushed to pieces." All right, he had been thoroughly looked down upon. But the little blue lamp's vision ensured that it wasn't exaggerating at all. For Qin Yu to be able to reach his current height and stand out amongst countless cultivators, he had a heart of awe towards the world of cultivation and had also built up the confidence he needed. But this time, he suddenly lost all confidence. Perhaps his performance could be called extraordinary, but looking at the myriad heavens, there were countless people that could compare with him or even surpass him. Could he really obtain the jade pendant's approval? If he missed out on this lucky chance, then even if his heart was as broad as the sea, he would still regret it for the rest of his life. As if sensing Qin Yu's thoughts, the little blue lamp was silent for a moment. It said, "Qin Yu, you do not need to belittle yourself. In this world, it is true that there are countless existences that surpass you in terms of talent and performance. But for you to appear in front of the jade pendant, that is your lucky chance. Just based on this point alone, you have surpassed them countless times over. This is because at the very least, you have the chance to obtain its approval, and those people will never have this chance in their entire lives. Moreover, you originally failed. It was the shadow vortex that interrupted the gift of the stars, thus giving you another chance. This was originally earned, so what does it matter if you fail?" Qin Yu took a deep breath. After a long time, he slowly exhaled. "You're right." He paused for a moment, his eyes becoming increasingly bright. "But for something like a consolation prize, taking it once is enough. I still want to try. There might be a chance at all." That was right. To be able to arrive in front of the heaven-piercing jade pendant was already a heaven-defying lucky chance. Out of the trillions of lives in this world, how many people could obtain it? For instance, the other cultivators that entered the mystic realm with him, and even the 4 Alliance elders, none of them knew what sort of lucky chance was placed in front of them, let alone trying to obtain the jade pendant's approval. He was already lucky enough, so how could he be greedier? He would do his best so that he wouldn't have any regrets. The little blue lamp was surprised by Qin Yu's performance. Then it revealed a bit of appreciation. For him to be able to walk out of his trough so quickly and adjust his state of mind was commendable. It didn't speak much about this matter. Instead, it changed the topic. "What do you plan on doing now? Do you want to find a place and wait for the war to end?" Qin Yu shook his head. "No, I want to take advantage of this chance to look for something first. He briefly explained his search for the ice-soul jade bed. The little blue lamp was silent for a moment. Then it said, "I don't know what the ice-soul jade bed you speak of looks like, but I can sense that there just happens to be one in this direction that contains an extremely cold object." Chinyu looked in the direction that the little blue lamp pointed in. There was a winding mountain range. The surface of the mountain was steep and covered with withered trees that looked like bony claws. Their dry branches were actually covered with heavy fruits. He revealed a puzzled expression. The little blue lamp continued to say, "It's inside the mountain." The mountain range didn't seem too far away, but the distance was actually astonishing. After flying for some time, Chinyu landed. He looked up at the stone wall in front of him and discovered traces of man-made excavation. As he thought about the news that Sky Declaring Pavilion had obtained that the ice-soul jade bed had been used as a burial object by some Alliance elder, he revealed a surprised expression. Chapter 825. It was indeed a great tomb. Two huge stone statues stood at the entrance of the tomb. One of them was a three-headed hellhound, and the other was a green-faced Yaksha with fangs and a long spear in its hand. Both of them looked ferocious and intimidating. But now, these two statues have been destroyed and turned into broken stones. The tomb door was wide open, and the sunken footprints on its surface were particularly clear. This was clearly an unwelcome guest who had entered without an invitation. Looking at the footprints and feeling the residual fluctuations in the air, Chinyu's complexion became strange. A thought popped up in his mind once more. It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? After a moment of silence, Chinyu's feet moved and he floated upwards. Like a shadow, he quietly flew into the tomb door. What he saw along the way proved that the master of the Great Tomb was an extremely cautious person. Even though the tomb was built in the Alliance's mystic realm, there were still layers upon layers of mechanisms and traps set up. Of course, these mechanisms and traps had all been scrapped. If it weren't for this, it wouldn't have been easy for Chinyu to enter. Here, he solemnly thanked the pioneer who opened the way. After avoiding two small mechanisms that hadn't been triggered, Chinyu smoothly reached the depths of the Great Tomb. He was cautious and cautious, afraid that he would make a sound and be discovered by the pioneer. But in the end, he discovered that this caution was useless. The entire Great Tomb was empty without a single person in sight. The only good news was that Chin had found the ice-soul jade bed. It was placed where the coffin should have been. Chin Yu carefully swept out with his divine sense. After making sure that he hadn't missed anything, he revealed a puzzled expression. Whether or not the person who broke in was the one he thought they were, that person had spent so much effort to come here and hadn't touched anything at all. A day trip into the tomb? Please, how could a normal person be so bored? As his thoughts raced, Chinyu arrived beside the ice-soul jade bed. It looked like a giant bed carved from a giant block of ice. Besides being a little more exquisite and gorgeous, there wasn't anything special about it. The ice wasn't completely transparent. Chinyu looked at it several times and suddenly gasped. He leaned over and found that there was a coffin within the ice-soul jade bed. He frowned and looked around. There weren't any signs of damage at all. Then, how did the master of this tomb place his coffin inside? At this time, the little blue lamp suddenly said, "How interesting." The entrance was actually designed in such an ingenious manner. The master of this tomb must have put a great deal of thought into it. Chinyu asked, "What did you discover?" The little blue lamp said, "The coffin in the ice is a hidden space node. Through it, you can enter another overlapping space. If you want to enter, you will need to shatter the ice-soul jade bed." Chinyu hesitated. It wasn't that he didn't want to part with the treasure, but that it was used to save the chicken overlord. If it was destroyed, the little blue lamp said, "Have you forgotten how wonderful this mystic realm is? Don't worry, it will quickly reassemble and recover." Right, I almost didn't think of that. Chinyu smiled. He suddenly realized where the vanguard had gone. It was clear that this person knew the secret of the spatial node and had already entered the overlapping space. thus there was no one here. Xiao Chan raised his hand and punched. The ice soul jade bed did not move at all, but the surging energy surging out was like a great river. Ka-cha! Ka-cha! In an instant, countless cracks appeared and rapidly spread outwards. Qin Yu drew back his hand. The ice soul jade bed shattered to the ground, revealing the coffin that lingered with cold energy. Without the obstruction of the ice, it was completely exposed. The entire surface of the coffin didn't have any patterns or decorations. It was covered in a thick black color that exuded a dignified and infernal energy. What do we do now? Simple. Push it open and lie down. Qin Yu, entering a coffin, didn't seem auspicious at all, but since he had already started, there was no reason for him to give up halfway. Moreover, he also wanted to know what goal this vanguard had in rushing in. Why did the master of this tomb arrange such a complex array? Before he could touch the coffin, the little blue lamp suddenly said, "Wait, if you attack like this, there will be a major problem. Now, follow the information I gave you and strike the surface of the coffin. Remember, don't make any mistakes, otherwise we will be in trouble." Okay, Qin Yu nodded. A fluctuation of consciousness entered his mind. He hesitated for a moment and then suddenly attacked. His movements were as fast as lightning, and he struck the surface of the coffin 36 times. Each time he struck a different place, covering nearly the entire surface of the coffin. The moment the 36th strike landed, Qin Yu retreated back to his original position. There was a loud cracking sound from the coffin, and then the coffin lid quietly opened, revealing a pitch-black crack. Qin Yu didn't step forward. He continued to stand where he was, as if he were waiting for something. At this time, a white bone hand suddenly shot out from the coffin. It grabbed the edge of the coffin and slowly pulled it open. Then, a corpse wearing a gorgeous robe and with all its flesh and blood rotting away. All that was left over was a skeleton. It sat up from the coffin and looked at Qin Yu with its empty eye sockets. Its mouth opened and closed, emitting a stiff and mechanical voice. "Why did you come again?" Qin Yu didn't know how to answer. He thought for a moment and remained silent. Luckily, the skeleton said, "Come in." It lay back down in the coffin and moved to the side, leaving a spot open for Qin Yu. Qin Yu's complexion was cloudy and uncertain, but after waiting for a moment, the little blue lamp didn't say anything. He clenched his teeth and stepped inside. "Don't resist." The little blue lamp's voice sounded out in his mind. In the next moment, the skeleton hugged Qin Yu tightly. The coffin lid quickly closed, and everything in front of him fell into darkness. Unexpectedly, as he fell into darkness, the feeling that the skeleton gave Qin Yu suddenly changed. It was gentle and full of elasticity. After a moment of hesitation, he moved his palm and touched it. It was warm and smooth to the touch. There was a light hum in his ears, and a hot and warm breath fell upon his ears. What the hell? This was clearly the horrifying plot of a skeleton in a coffin. So how did it suddenly turn into a sweet temptation in the darkness? Qin Yu wasn't moved at all. Rather, he felt even more horrified. If it weren't for the little blue lamp's reminder, he would have never been able to stop himself from attacking. A fragrant and sweet taste with a hint of coolness continuously drilled into his nose. Qin Yu frowned. His heart uncontrollably began to beat faster. A wave of heat flowed through his limbs and quickly spread to every inch of his body. It was as if an invisible flame had been ignited in his body. It seemed to be able to burn a person's rationality into ashes, leaving only instinct and desire. "Since you've come, why must you leave? Isn't it a better choice to stay here and accompany me?" A slightly hoarse voice rang in her ears. "Answer me. Do you choose me, or do you want to leave? Why aren't you speaking? Are you worried that if you open your mouth, you won't be able to help but want to stay? If you remain silent like this, then I will take it as you tacitly agree. Do you really want to leave? Why? Is it because I'm not beautiful enough? But you haven't truly seen me yet. Can you give me a chance to prove myself?" The flames within his body burned hotter and hotter. Qin, you could clearly hear his heart pounding like a drum. His body began to heat up, but when he opened his eyes, they were indifferent, like calm water beneath ice. without the slightest fluctuation. Stay, stay. Why aren't you speaking? Speak. I hate your silence. I want you to stay. Stay with me. The woman's voice became shrill and grating. She used more and more strength in the darkness, crazily holding on to Chinyu. The warm and soft feeling soon became binding. She was like a rope, desperately trying to squeeze into Chinyu's flesh and blood. But in the face of all of this, he was like a block of wood. Whether it was the temptation from before or the madness of tearing apart all pretenses, he didn't respond at all. He was like a passerby watching from the sidelines. After an unknown period of time, a woman's unwilling scream resounded in Chinyu's ears. The little blue lamp lightly said, "We've arrived." Shwa. Chinyu opened his eyes. He was peacefully lying in the coffin. Besides him, there was only darkness, so dark that he couldn't even see his own fingers. Vaguely, he could feel a pair of eyes filled with unwillingness staring at him from the darkness. Frowning, Chinyu closed his eyes once more. The feeling of being stared at was immediately blocked out. Bang! There was movement outside. Luo, he stood in the great tomb. The environment here was actually almost identical to another space. The only difference was that there was a black stone chair here. Now, the figure sitting on the stone chair was being held in midair by an invisible force. His widened eyes were filled with shock and anger. Impossible. In this space, you can actually use a strength stronger than mine. Yin Yueming struggled with all his might, but it was all in vain. Luo, he crossed her hands behind her back, her eyes icy cold. In this world, there is nothing that is impossible. But I really must thank you. If it weren't for you being too selfish as an elder of the Alliance and placing your hopes on resurrection after death, how could I have locked onto it? Yin Yueming's eyes widened. Who are you? Just who are you? Luo, he lightly said, you're just a lonely ghost that died long ago and still refuses to return to the dust of the earth. Why would you need to know so much? In order to express my thanks to you, I will act quickly so that you won't feel too much pain. Ah! Yin Yueming miserably cried out. His soul began to burn. Within the gray flames, his soul body rapidly melted away. But as this happened, the phantom of a fetus egg appeared. It was extremely thin and dim, as if it were formed from interweaving smoke. It seemed as if a single breath could scatter it away. Luohi's eyes brightened. Her face flushed red with excitement. She stared at the fetus egg phantom in front of her, as if she could see the future and hope within it. This was indeed his last chance. If he succeeded, all the trials and tribulations he had experienced would turn into smoke. He would return with a new appearance and a greater strength. If he failed, then he would be beyond redemption. Everything would be over. I will not fail. I cannot fail. She looked up, her eyes locking onto the fetus egg phantom. Luo, he slowly reached out a hand. Her movements were slow, as if she were worried that if she moved just a little bit more, the phantom would scatter. Her 5 fingers opened and grasped forwards. Then she stuffily coughed, and all the blood drained from her face. At the same time, the lines on her palm began to rapidly turn black. It was like a black river was gathering at the center, forming a pitch black hole that couldn't be seen. Sensing the aura of the fetus egg, the edges of the black hole wriggled and expanded, finally swallowing up the flesh and blood of her palm. The remaining 5 fingers were also invaded by the darkness, turning a hard metallic color. It was like 5 iron nails had been inserted into space, holding the black hole in place. In the next moment, the black hole spat out black rays of light that wove together into a net that covered the fetus egg phantom. Thump! Thump! Lying in the pitch-black coffin, you could clearly hear the beating that occurred every once in a while. It was deep and heavy, like the sun and moon were hammers that shook the entire world, emitting a powerful will that suppressed all. Because of the little blue lamp, even though Chinyu was here, he could clearly see what was happening outside. He had seen the entire process of Luo, he killing Yun Mingwe. He had also seen the black hole appear on his palm and imprison the fetus egg. It really was him. As time passed, the black light wove together into a net. The fetus egg phantom became increasingly clear, as if it were gradually materializing from a shadow. And the beating he heard just now had come from the fetus egg. Moreover, as it continued to solidify, it became increasingly clear. It's the will from the shadow vortex. The little blue lamp said, "My estimates were a bit off. I don't know why the heaven-piercing jade annulus that descended into this space has to have some problem. Otherwise, with its strength, even if it is the strength of the world's source, it would still be impossible to forcefully summon it through a projection." Chinyu frowned. "What should we do?" The little blue lamp said, "Stop him." After a brief pause, it repeated itself, its voice becoming increasingly firm. "We must stop him." Chinyu said, "Are you confident?" If it was just Luo he alone, he wouldn't fear her. But now, what had descended upon him was the strength of the shadow vortex's will. To be more accurate, this strength came from the world's source will. The little blue lamp said, "No, but we have to give it a try. Even if there is only a 10% chance of success." It seemed to take a deep breath. "You definitely can't understand why I have suddenly become so radical. But, to tell you the truth, we have no other choice right now. Without accident, it will be forcefully summoned and destroyed by the shadow vortex's will. If we witness all of this and stay out of it, believe me, even if we can leave today, our future will be cursed and we will fall into eternal silence." Chinyu, what did the heaven-piercing jade annulus have to do with the fetus egg? What was its origin? If they encountered it, they couldn't even avoid it. They had to risk their lives to help it. There is actually such an overbearing existence in this world. Restrain your thoughts and don't waste your mind. We really need to go all out. The little blue lamp's tone was particularly calm. But from his calmness, one could clearly feel the decisiveness of throwing everything aside. "In a moment, I will mobilize all of my strength to resist the shadow vortex's will. What you need to do is kill this person in the shortest time possible. As long as he dies and loses the medium, the shadow vortexes will have no choice but to retreat. Believe me, although this battle has great risks, there is also a chance it will bring unexpected harvests. Chinyu, I have a premonition that whether or not you can obtain its approval will depend on this moment." The little blue lamp no longer spoke, but Chinyu could feel a terrifying strength constantly gathering in the darkness, crossing through space and time. At this moment, the feeling that the little blue lamp gave him was like a true sun hanging in the heavens. It was vast and boundless, impossible to resist. It could burn all to ashes and turn them to powder. It really was going all out. Chinyu was well aware that the little blue lamp was prepared to go all out. Even if it failed today, there was a high chance it would survive. Perhaps it would fall into a long slumber until someone else found it. But if it failed, it would surely die, and it would die in an extremely ugly manner. If it didn't want to die, there was time to go all out. Chinyu closed his eyes, silently waiting. Within the net of interweaving black light, the embryo egg finally condensed. At this time, with a loud explosion, the entire underground tomb sunk down dozens of feet. The smooth stone slabs laid on the ground began to crack like a spider web. The cracks even spread to the main body of the tomb palace, as if a giant mouth were crying out in pain. An invisible attraction was released from the embryo egg, as if it were the amalgamation of all that was beautiful in the world. Just by looking at it, one would feel a desire to occupy it without a care for anything else. Luohi's breathing became heavy and the blood vessels in his eyes rapidly filled with blood. In the blink of an eye, his eyes turned crimson. He took a step forwards. A fluctuation suddenly came from the black hole in his palm, causing him to awaken. His forehead was covered with a cold sweat. In that moment, just now, he had a desperate impulse to protect the embryo egg from harm. If it weren't for that person's strength, Luo, he was well aware that he would have already become a puppet being controlled. What a terrifying embryo egg. Luohi's pupils shrank, revealing a deep fear and dread. He didn't dare to look at it any longer. He closed his eyes and grasped forwards. Bang! The black hole rapidly grew. The net of black light that covered the embryo egg contracted, slowly pulling it over. The entire process was extremely slow. Even the black light that formed the net constantly collapsed and reformed. It was clear that this seemingly simple act of dragging the embryo egg would cause an incomparably astonishing loss of strength. Chinyu suppressed his impulse. He had already guessed what the little blue lamp was thinking. First, he would have a shadow vortex consume some of its strength to increase his chances of victory. Even if the chances were small, in the face of life or death, he had to strive for it with everything he had. The embryo egg drew closer and closer to the black hole. Faintly, he could hear excited roars coming from the black hole. Now, the little blue lamp roared. Chinyu's eyes flashed open, and a powerful aura broke out from his body. Bang! The coffin lid was lifted off, and he rushed forwards. Without hesitation, he punched out his fist. Chinyu used his full strength in this punch. It also detonated all of the strength that the little blue lamp had gathered. In a battle of life or death, there was no room for concealment. This punch had caught him off guard, and also happened when his opponent was relaxed. He had to obtain the greatest result possible. Bang! There was a heaven-shaking explosion. The black hole was violently bombarded. The edges violently trembled, and the swallowing strength it released stagnated. In the next moment, the net that wrapped around the embryo egg began to collapse. Light flashed on the surface of the embryo egg. It was like a shining star, turning into a sweeping impact that tore apart the net. Roar! An angry roar echoed out from the vortex. Although it was pitch black inside, Chinyu could still feel the eyes locked onto him. It was like an invisible mountain had arrived, able to suppress the highest heavens and 10th earth. Luckily, this feeling only lasted for a moment before it was blocked by the little blue lamp. Otherwise, Chinyu feared his mind would have been crushed to pieces. Chinyu. Chapter 826. It was him again. Ever since Yin Dai refused to enter his tutelage, this was the fourth time Chinyu had ruined his plans at a critical moment. And this time, he had no path of retreat. If he couldn't succeed, all that was left for him was death. Looking at Chinyu in front of her, Luo he wished he could eat his flesh and blood. His chest was filled with hatred. Kill him, kill him. The black hole roared, and an invisible strength erupted. It was like an erupting volcano, capable of burning all to ashes. In terms of hatred, the shadow vortex's hatred for Chinyu was 100 times stronger than Luo He's. Only the heavens knew how many years it had waited for this chance. Once it failed, it would be impossible to use similar methods to attack again. As for finding another path, who knew how many years it would take? Leave it to me. Remember what you need to do. Kill this person in the shortest time possible. The little blue lamp calmly said. In the next moment, the phantom of a great sun appeared in the tomb palace. A terrifyingly high temperature caused the air to burn, releasing a blinding light. Bang! In the endless starry skies, it was like two astonishing stars colliding with each other at high speeds. A loud explosion erupted, and annihilating fluctuations covered the entire tomb palace. With a stuffy cough, Chinyu swayed, and blood flowed out from the corners of his lips. He could clearly hear the pained groans coming from every inch of his body. Luckily, the moment the annihilating fluctuations erupted, the black hole in the tomb palace and the great sun phantom vanished at the same time. But through his connection with the little blue lamp, Chinyu knew that they hadn't vanished. Rather, they had been pulled into another dimension during the battle. As for where this dimension came from, he had no idea. Taking a deep breath, Chinyu looked up and locked on a Luo He. His eyes were icy cold, and without hesitation, he stepped forwards. Whoosh! His body broke through the air, emitting ear-piercing sonic booms. He left behind a series of afterimages as he shot forwards like an arrow. In that instant of annihilation, Luo, he was also injured. He wiped the blood from the corners of his lips and diabolically grinned as he pressed forwards. His blood-stained fingertips fiercely thrust into the air. There was a howl in his ears as a giant blood-red wolf appeared. It seemed to be condensed from a trillion seas of blood. The smell of blood around it was nearly tangible. It faced Qin Yu and opened its jaws, swallowing him whole. Starfall Archipelago. Not long after the shadow vortex erupted, news of the changes in the secret realm had already reached them. The higher-ups of the Alliance were shaken, and they immediately responded. However, what shocked and angered them was that the teleportation hall leading to the arcane realm had been sealed for some reason. Biggie Douglas's face was as calm as still water. He looked into the depths of the endless sea realm and said in a sonorous voice, "Use the token to summon the Alliance Guardian." The expressions of the Alliance higher-ups behind him changed. Based on the agreement they had made with the Protectors, every time they attacked, the Alliance would have to pay a high price. Even with the Alliance's wealth and foundation, they would still feel the pain of slicing their flesh. But in the end, no one objected. The existence of a mystic realm could be called the foundation of the Beast Trainer Alliance. If there was a problem with it, the Beast Trainer Alliance might be able to continue existing, but it would be difficult for them to regain their current strength and status. After a while, a large bell that had been sealed for tens of thousands of years was taken out from the depths of the treasury. As Biggie Douglas hammered down heavily, a bell chime that could not be heard by human ears instantly spread out of the island and rushed into the boundless sea. The sound of the bell continued onward, onward, and onward. Finally, it entered a region of the sea that was shrouded in fog all year round. The blood wolf howled in pain. Its abdomen rapidly expanded and then exploded in the next moment. Qin Yu didn't pause at all. He punched forwards. Luo, he was expressionless. All of his previous anger and resentment had turned into an icy chill in his eyes. Facing Qin Yu's fist, he slowly said, "Qin Yu, today you will die." Bang! Qin Yu's fist struck Luo he. But a strange scene occurred. Luo, he was like a shadow that instantly evaded Qin Yu. A wild strength erupted, shaking space. Like water being stirred. Luo, his figure twisted and deformed. But there was no pain on his face. "It's useless. My path of shadow transformation has reached large success. To you, I am a shadow, and to me, you are also a shadow. And no matter how formidable a shadow is, it cannot cause any damage. Just this point alone puts me in an invincible position." Path of shadow transformation. Qin Yu frowned for a moment before composing himself. "I am a shadow, and you are also a shadow. You cannot kill me." Luo, he lightly said, "I don't need to kill you. As long as I can delay you long enough to destroy that strength within your body, I will have already won." Qin Yu said, "Are you so confident that the shadow vortex will win?" Luo, his eyes flashed. "It looks like you know a great deal. If so, then you should be well aware of what this will represent. To make an enemy of a world, no matter who it is, their final fate is to be utterly destroyed." Qin Yu coldly sneered. "If you really believe so, then we can continue waiting and see just who will be the final victor." The spatial shaking gradually subsided. Luo, his figure returned to normal. After a moment of silence, he revealed a smile. "Although I am confident in myself, it is indeed foolish to leave my fate in the hands of unknown luck. Moreover, I have already grasped the key to thoroughly killing you. Qin Yu, before you die, let me tell you something. My true name is Shalioha. Do you feel as if you have suddenly realized something? But it is already too late." The corners of Luo, his lips curled up in a strange smile. Or rather, Shalioha, who had transformed into him, suddenly stepped forwards. As a step fell, he vanished. When he reappeared, he had already fallen beside Qin Yu. He didn't attack. Instead, he met Qin Yu's gaze and melted into the ground, vanishing from sight. Then, he sneered, his mocking voice ringing out in Qin Yu's mind. "So what if you are strong? In the end, the one to kill you will be your shadow. Then, strictly speaking, you will be the one to kill yourself. Don't you find this hard to believe? But please believe me, this will soon happen. And even if you know, you will be powerless to resist. You will only be able to watch helplessly on as your shadow slowly swallows you up. The shadow beneath Qin Yu's feet suddenly turned its head, as if staring straight at him. A cold and sinister aura floated in the air. But at this time, Shao Yoha miserably cried out, his voice filled with shock and disbelief. Impossible. You clearly haven't cultivated the path of shadow transformation. So why is your shadow world like this? The shadow beneath Qin Yu fiercely struggled. Shao Yoha wanted to escape, but he discovered that shackles had already wrapped around his body and he couldn't break free. Qin Yu, just who are you? I can't accept this. I can't accept this. Shao Yoha's hateful screams gradually faded away. Qin Yu revealed a look of surprise. He rubbed his temples, a bit understanding. It was true that he hadn't cultivated the path of shadow transformation, but Undying had always lived in his shadow. It was clear that before he left, he had made some arrangements in Qin Yu's shadow world. In these past years, Qin Yu hadn't encountered such an attack, so he hadn't noticed it until Shao Yoha hit the jackpot. He originally thought that there would be a great battle, but who would have thought that things would end so easily? In Luo, he was actually Shao Yoha. This also explained why Qin Yu felt an inexplicable sense of disgust and hostility towards him at first glance. Bang! The void shook and two layered worlds appeared in Qin Yu's line of sight. One was a shining sun, and the other was a massive black hole that swallowed everything. This was that mysterious dimension. Shao Yoha had died, and the medium through which the shadow vortexes had descended was destroyed. The black hole trembled and began to collapse. He had won. It was only at this moment that Qin Yu truly relaxed. Be careful. A thought fluctuation sounded out in his mind. This was the little blue lamp's voice. Qin Yu's pupils violently shrank. An inexplicable sense of fear and alarm invaded his heart. Without hesitation, he stepped forwards. Bang! With a loud explosion, he rapidly drew back. But to some existences, no matter how fast Qin Yu's reaction speed was, it was meaningless in their eyes. Within the mysterious dimension, the black hole's collapse accelerated and it instantly dissipated. At the same time, a black light shot out. It crossed the barrier of two spaces and smashed into Qin Yu's chest. As Qin Yu retreated, he could clearly see the black light approach. He wanted to dodge, but he couldn't react at all. Like a puppet, he could only watch helplessly as it sank into his chest and vanished from sight. His ears rang, and his consciousness fell into darkness. Within the tomb palace, a great sun phantom suddenly appeared. Boundless strength gushed out, supporting the fallen Qin Yu in midair. A figure emerged from the great sun phantom. Without bothering to hide itself, it lifted a hand and touched Qin Yu's body. At this moment, space fell into a deathly silence. The figure within the great sun suddenly gave off a desolate feeling. As it looked at Qin Yu, its eyebrows furrowed together, its eyes filled with disbelief. Dead. He had actually died. Although the vitality of his mortal body still existed, his soul had been torn apart. The little blue lamp could feel that Qin Yu's aura was fading away. When his aura vanished, he would no longer exist in this world. The little blue lamp slowly turned around and looked at the embryo egg. Its voice was icy cold. Why? The embryo egg was silent. You must admit that he saved you. You could have helped him block that black light just now. The embryo egg remained silent. The little blue lamp didn't speak again. It flicked its sleeves and picked up Qin Yu, preparing to leave. After Qin Yu died, it would suffer a backlash and soon fall into a deep slumber. But before that, it had to properly bury him. This was the only thing it could do for Qin Yu right now. The silent embryo egg suddenly erupted with light. The little blue lamp was sent flying away. It could only watch helplessly on as Qin Yu's body flew towards the embryo egg. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.